Chapter 85. Unsheathing his spirit saber, Lung Shiqi was full of fighting spirit, and took the initiative to attack. Lung Shiqi used Ghost Parade and Confusion footwork at the same time. His speed was as fast as the wind as he circled behind the pig badger, and slashed out with his saber. However, when the saber landed on the pig badger's body, it made a ding-ding-dang-dang sound. Only then did Lung Shiqi notice that the animal skin on the pig badger's body had almost formed a heavy armor. When the saber slashed down, it only shattered this layer of armor, causing a little green liquid to seep out of the pig badger's back. For the pig badger, this was not painful at all. Swoosh! The pig badger suddenly attacked, its sharp claws tearing through the air. Lung Shiqi quickly dodged and found that the pig badger's speed was about the same as a lynx's, so he immediately changed his strategy. Next, Lung Shiqi no longer faced the pig badger head-on. Instead, he relied on his movement technique to constantly circle around it, slashing whenever he had the opportunity. At the same time, he was also looking for the pig badger's weakness. Poochie Lung Shiqi's saber slashed the pig badger's neck. He felt as if the saber had cut through a piece of soft meat, and he knew that the pig badger's weakness was at the back of its neck. He was slightly happy, but at this moment he suddenly saw the mural on the other side begin to squirm and flash with a strange light. Not good. Lung Shiqi's expression changed slightly. While dodging the pig badger's attack, he raised his hand and an earth wall rose from the ground to block the mural. Roar! Soon after, Lung Shiqi opened his mouth and let out a deafening roar. A formless sound wave shook the pig badger and stunned it. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Lung Shiqi jumped high and a bright light shone on his spirit saber. Then he suddenly swung his saber and slashed out a dazzling saber aura. The saber aura slashed into the pig badger's neck and a large amount of green liquid burst out. However, when the saber aura was halfway in, it was embedded inside. More importantly, the pig badger was not dead yet. The earth wall on the other side began to crack. The pig badger let out a series of mournful screams, its arms flailing wildly. Lung Shiqi wanted to pull out the spirit saber, but when he tried, he found that he couldn't pull it out. At first, he was anxious, but then an idea flashed through his mind. With a thought, a heavy axe suddenly appeared in his other hand, while the spirit saber disappeared. He was using the system space to retrieve the spirit saber and summon the heavy axe. Lung Shiqi took the opportunity to grab the heavy axe with both hands, aimed at the huge wound, and swung it down fiercely. With a plop, the huge pig's head was chopped off and fell to the ground. Stinky green liquid spurted out like a column. However, Lung Shiqi wasn't in the mood to pay attention to this, because the earth wall next to him had already shattered, and a deer monster rushed out of it. Bulldozer deer. As soon as the bull deer appeared, it locked onto Lung Shiqi and charged at him with its two large antlers. Facing the bull deer, Lung Shiqi wasn't in a hurry. He directly threw the heavy axe on the ground, making a clanging sound. He drew his sword with his right hand and pointed the tip of the sword, shooting out an invisible sword chi. The bull deer was similar to the pig badger. Its fur and hide formed a set of armor. However, the bull deer exposed many weaknesses. Its forelimbs weren't protected by armor. The meridian unblocking sword chi directly pierced through the bull deer's thigh, leaving a bloody hole. At the same time, the sword chi entered its body and immediately blocked its meridians, hindering the flow of spirit energy. Monster beasts were powerful because they were born with powerful bodies that humans couldn't compare to. Furthermore, they were able to contain a lot of spirit energy. Just like humans, monster beasts had meridians in their bodies, and spirit energy flowed through their meridians. The only difference was that humans learned how to use spirit energy more flexibly and cleverly after learning cultivation techniques, while monster beasts only knew how to use spirit energy based on their instincts. Lung Shiqi's meridian unblocking sword chi not only had a strong penetrative power, it also blocked the meridians after entering the body, hindering the flow of spirit energy. If a spirit cultivator was hit by the meridian unblocking sword chi, they might be able to think of a way to bypass the meridians. However, monster beasts didn't have that kind of intelligence. The bull deer charged forward recklessly. The injury to its thigh didn't affect it much, but the meridian unblocking sword chi blocked the flow of spirit energy in its body. The bull deer immediately lost control of its body and fell to the ground. Lung Shiqi seized the opportunity and sent out several meridian unblocking sword chi to seal the bulldeer's meridians. Without the support of spirit energy, monster beasts were only left with their bodies. Although they were still very strong, they weren't much of a threat to Lung Shiqi. Thus, Lung Shiqi tried his best to conserve his spirit energy and slowly killed the bulldeer. After killing the pig badger and the bulldeer, Lung Shiqi didn't let down his guard. He knew that the strongest monster in this corridor hadn't appeared yet. At the end of the corridor there was a wall. On the wall, there was a carving of a monster that was neither human nor beast. The monster was sitting cross-legged with a blood-red bead in its hands. The moment the bulldeer died, the carving suddenly lit up with a terrifying blood-red light, especially the blood-red bead that was constantly twisting. Following that, a monster suddenly jumped out. Sharp-clawed wolf. The sharp-clawed wolf looked a little like a beast man. Its entire body was covered in light armor, and its 2-feet-long black claws extended from its claws. It looked abnormally terrifying. However, the aura on its body was even more terrifying. It could be said that it was the strongest rank 1 monster Lung Shiqi had ever seen. It was even stronger than the mutated monster from before. Lung Shiqi took a deep breath. He knew that this was a strong opponent. The moment the sharp-clawed wolf appeared, it raised its claws high. When its claws fell, the sharp-clawed wolf was already in front of Lung Shiqi. Shwa! The sharp-clawed wolf swung down, but it grabbed empty air. Lung Shiqi was already prepared when the sharp-clawed wolf made its move. He hurriedly teleported away. However, he was still shocked by the sharp-clawed wolf's speed. Its speed wasn't inferior to the mutated monster from before. The sharp-clawed wolf didn't hit its target, but it continued to attack. Its claws lit up with a faint blood-red light. Lung Shiqi didn't dare to take it head-on. He hurriedly used the confusion footwork to dodge. At the same time, a pulse unblocking sword chi shot out. The pulse unblocking sword chi only cut a small wound on the monster's body. The pulse unblocking sword chi entered the sharp-clawed wolf's body and blocked its spirit energy. Lung Shiqi's eyes narrowed. He pointed the tip of his sword at the sharp-clawed wolf and used the chaotic flower's dazzling eyes. The sharp-clawed wolf seemed to have some intelligence. It felt the threat and the blood-red light on its claws bloomed. Then its entire body spun rapidly. The blood-red light connected into a blood-red halo. Lung Shiqi's chaotic flower's dazzling eyes sword light pierced the blood-red halo. There was a soft sound of metal clashing and dazzling sparks. After the chaotic flower's dazzling eyes move, only 2 pulse unblocking sword chi broke through the sharp-clawed wolf's defense and pierced into its body. Lung Shiqi was shocked. His chaotic flower's dazzling eyes move was broken for the first time. And it was broken by a monster. Chapter 86. This was the first time that Lung Shiqi's chaotic flower dazzling eyes was broken. Although he was shocked, he didn't slow down. The claws of the wolf could only defend its upper body. Lung Shiqi immediately shot out a few Chonmai chakra sword chi and hit the wolf's legs. Puff puff puff. A few small wounds appeared on the wolf's legs. It stopped moving and its legs tightly grasped the ground. Its upper body was twisted to a terrifying angle. Its whole body was covered with a layer of blood. Lung Shiqi's heart skipped a beat when he saw this. He recalled that this was the starting motion of the wolf claw's unique skill. Sure enough, after a breath, the wolf's figure suddenly disappeared. It was so fast that it only left a red light in the dim corridor. Swish! Lung Shiqi tried his best to move out, but a large part of his clothes was still scratched by the wolf. It even left a few bloody marks on his left leg. However, Lung Shiqi didn't dare to stop and continued to move because the wolf disappeared again. This time, Lung Shiqi had a premonition. While moving, he waved his sword and made a ding sound. However, although he blocked the attack, his body was still smashed to the wall by the wolf's powerful force. At this time, the wolf jumped high and rushed towards Lung Shiqi. Lung Shiqi was not surprised. He turned around and ran along the wall. It was the chakra walk technique. Immediately, with a boom sound, the wolf blasted a big hole in the place where Lung Shiqi was just. It waved its claws again, and a scarlet blood light burst out from its claws. With a wave, the blood light turned into 3 astral swords and quickly cut towards Lung Shiqi. Lung Shiqi controlled his spiritual power to move back and forth on the wall, narrowly avoiding the two astral swords. However, he couldn't avoid the last one. Lung Shiqi hurriedly put away his sword, and a sword suddenly appeared in his right hand. The battle saber overflowed with spiritual light as Lung Shiqi slashed down, and a crescent-shaped saber light poured out. Ding 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 ding. The saber radiance and the saber aura collided head-on, and a dense sound of collision immediately rang out. Gradually, the blood-red saber aura became fainter and fainter. Finally, its power was exhausted and it dissipated. But Lung Shiqi's blade was still there. The sharp claw wolf's legs had already been penetrated by the meridian-piercing sword qi, and the series of powerful attacks just now had consumed a lot of its physical strength and spiritual power. At this moment, it was already somewhat weak. Lung Shiqi's spirit saber flashed with saber aura. He jumped down from the wall and slashed at the wolf with the sharp saber aura. The sharp claw wolf was in a weakened state, and its speed was much slower. There was no way it could dodge. The saber light instantly engulfed the wolf and chopped off one of its claws. Aoo! The claw wolf howled. It was unknown whether it had recovered its strength, or it was just a momentary lapse of consciousness. Its figure moved and ran away, just in time to avoid another strike from Lung Shiqi. Seeing this, Lung Shiqi made a prompt decision. The spirit saber in his hand directly chased after the sharp claw wolf. At the same time, Lung Shiqi unsheathed his spirit sword. A black fog rose under his feet, and the sword stabbed out. One saber and one sword, one left and one right, attacked the sharp claw wolf almost at the same time. The sharp claw wolf waved its other claw and slapped the spirit saber away. At this moment, Lung Shiqi came with his sword. Before the sword arrived, the sword aura arrived first. A ray of meridian-piercing sword qi tore open the light armor in front of the sharp claw wolf's heart. Just as Lung Shiqi was about to stab it, its speed suddenly increased. Rushing thunder sword. With a poochie sound, the spirit sword pierced the sharp claw wolf's heart. Immediately, several rays of sword aura surged out, wantonly strangling its flesh and internal organs. At the same time it was strangling its vitality. Lung Shiqi did not dare to neglect the sharp claw wolf. His left hand formed a fist, and the surging fist force was like riding the wind and breaking the waves as it fiercely smashed into the sharp claw wolf's heart. Tiger breaking three waves fist. The two forces, one bright and one dark, arrived and completely destroyed the sharp claw wolf's vitality. Lung Shiqi pulled out his spirit sword, kicked the sharp claw wolf's corpse away, and then leaned against the wall, panting. A strong sense of exhaustion came from his body. The battle with the sharp claw wolf had consumed almost 80% of his spirit power. Not only that, but it had also forced him to use all of his trump cards. He had used Chaotic Flower's Dazzling Eyes, Waning Moon Rapid Light Slash, and Tiger Breaking Three Waves Fist to barely kill this beast. It could be said that it had forced him to use all of his skills. It could be seen how terrifying this sharp claw wolf was. Lung Shiqi hurriedly swallowed spirit recovery pills and healing pills. Then he picked up the spirit saber and heavy axe, and took out 2 spirit stones to meditate on the spot, and began to recover his spirit power. After about an hour, Lung Shiqi stopped. At this moment, he had recovered all of his spirit power. Unexpectedly, he found that the spirit power in his body was a bit purer. He couldn't help but sigh inwardly. Sure enough, only by constantly fighting could he improve faster. Then he walked to the end of the long corridor, and went around the wall where the sharp claw wolf had jumped out. Behind it was a narrow secret passage that led upwards. Lung Shiqi knew that this secret passage had a mechanism. As long as someone went in, the walls on both sides would be filled with dense spikes. He estimated that the secret passage was only a few hundred feet away. Immediately, he used the 100 Ghosts Nocturnal Walk enigmatic footwork and leaped into the secret passage. 2 seconds after Lung Shiqi entered the secret passage, the walls on both sides began to shake. However, at this time Lung Shiqi was already halfway through. Kacha-kacha. The walls on both sides rose, revealing countless thick spikes inside. The spikes began to slowly pierce out. At this moment, Lung Shiqi was already 70% of the way through. Boom boom boom. The 2 walls with countless spikes collided. If someone was inside, they would definitely die without a complete corpse. Unfortunately, at the moment they closed in, a figure leaped out. Lung Shiqi looked at the sealed secret passage behind him and wiped the cold sweat from his forehead. If he was a little slower, he would have stayed inside forever. Lung Shiqi collected his thoughts and looked around. At this time he was standing on the edge of a cliff. On the opposite side of the cliff was the ruins of an old palace. There were broken walls everywhere. There was a long broken suspension bridge between the cliffs. Lung Shiqi carefully walked onto the suspension bridge. The suspension bridge immediately swayed. He quickly used his spirit power to stabilize himself. As he walked, Lung Shiqi couldn't help but look down. He saw that it was all fog and he didn't know how deep it was. A black fog immediately rose from Lung Shiqi's feet. He suddenly sped up and quickly crossed the suspension bridge. When he stepped on the ground of the ruins, he felt that he was on solid ground. However, he didn't continue to move forward. Instead, he narrowed his eyes. On the road to the palace, there was a dilapidated square. The square was full of collapsed stone pillars. On each of these broken pillars stood a statue. Upon closer inspection, they were all bat statues. However, these bats were half the height of a person. Lung Shiqi picked up a few stones by his feet. After experiencing this dungeon, he naturally knew that these were not statues, but monsters. Clawbats. Chapter 87. So, a small stone hit a bat statue. Immediately after, the bat sculpture began to crack, making a caw-caw sound. In the blink of an eye, a huge bat monster broke through the statue and flew out. It first circled in the air, and when it found Lung Shiqi, it immediately opened its claws and flew over. Rank 1 monster. Lung Shiqi felt the presence of the sharp claw bat from afar, and his heart changed. Normal rank 1 monsters were nothing to Lung Shiqi, but looking around, there were at least 10 to 20 sharp claw bats in the square. Behind them were the more troublesome sound wave bats and the bat leader. And these bats all had the ability to fly. Although they were not very high, they were still a big problem for Lung Shiqi. This was not easy to pass, so he could only take it step by step. A sharp claw bat flew over. Lung Shiqi's spirit sword shook and shot out 2 streaks of unblocking pulse sword chi. The unblocking pulse sword chi directly pierced through the bat's wings and sealed its spirit energy. The bat suddenly fell down halfway. Lung Shiqi immediately rushed forward. With a sword in his right hand and a saber in his left, he quickly killed the bat. Lung Shiqi sensed the spirit chi in his body. Killing this ordinary sharp claw bat consumed nearly 20% of his spirit chi. In other words, he would have to stop to recover his spirit energy after killing 5 bats at most. This was destined to be a long battle. He muttered, "It's a bit troublesome." But if this idea spread out, he would definitely be beaten to death by many people. It had to be known that even the people at the 5th or 6th level of the pure spirit realm on the Blood Mist Island would barely be able to fight a single bat. Lung Shiqi only used 20% of his spirit energy to easily kill it, and he still looked unhappy. Troublesome was troublesome, but it was better than being surrounded and killed by a large group of rank 1 monsters. Next, Lung Shiqi steadily attracted one bat after another. When he ran out of spirit energy, he would recover it. Gradually, there were fewer and fewer statues in the square, and the Lung Shiqi's position became deeper and deeper. When the last sharp claw bat died under his sword, Lung Shiqi used the same trick again. He threw a stone to attract the sonic bats behind him. These sonic bats were different from the claw bats. They were smaller in size and did not have particularly sharp teeth or claws. However, it could emit a strange sound wave. In the game world, it only caused damage, but Lung Shiqi wasn't sure what effect it would have now. But in any case, he had to be more careful. However, to his surprise, even though the stone had only hit one sonic bat, several of the statues around it had already begun to crack. Even the bat leader that was about 10 feet tall was included. Oh no! Lung Shiqi knew something was wrong. Just as he was about to retreat, the bat leader and several sonic bats opened their ferocious mouths at the same time. Waves of silent, invisible sound waves filled the entire square. These sound waves clearly did not have any sound, but when they fell into his ears, Lung Shiqi's eardrums were torn apart. His brain also felt like it was being stabbed by needles. And those bats had already pounced on Lung Shiqi. Lung Shiqi forcibly endured the pain in his head. He opened his mouth wide, and a huge sound wave also resounded through the square, immediately canceling out a portion of the sound waves. Using sound waves to fight sound waves. And Lung Shiqi's sound waves also made the bats dizzy. Other than the bat leader that could still fly in the air, the other sonic bats all fell to the ground. Lung Shiqi did not retreat at this time. Instead, he moved forward. His body suddenly turned into several phantoms, and with a sharp sword aura and invisible sword chi, he passed through the sonic bats. For a moment, the sword aura flashed and the sword chi was everywhere. More than half of those sonic bats died in an instant. At this moment, Lung Shiqi did not expect that he would actually complete the fusion of channel unblocking sword chi and chaotic blossoms gradually mesmerizing eyes, while his mind was not clear. The power of chaotic blossoms gradually mesmerizing eyes, which was integrated with a rank 3 spiritual skill, instantly increased by several levels. But there was also bad news. Chaotic blossoms gradually mesmerizing eyes was indeed very strong, but the spiritual power consumed also increased dramatically. This move had consumed more than 30% of his spiritual energy. When Lung Shiqi had just broken through to the pure spirit realm, this move also consumed about 30% of his spiritual power. But now Lung Shiqi's cultivation was at the peak of the 6th level of the pure spirit realm. Although it was the same 30%, the difference was very big. Consuming so much spiritual power in an instant made Lung Shiqi feel a faint sense of exhaustion. At this time, the bat leader rapidly flapped its wings, but it did not fly over. Instead, it gradually gathered a strong wind in front of it. Lung Shiqi knew that it was not good. Suddenly, the bat leader spread its wings, and a huge gust of strong wind attacked. "Rise!" Lung Shiqi shouted in a low voice, and a thick earth wall suddenly rose in front of him. He tapped the wall with the tip of his foot and flew back. Unexpectedly, the seemingly thick earth wall did not even last 2 breaths of time before it shattered. Fortunately, Lung Shiqi had already used the confusion steps to move out. Even so, the side of his body was still a little bit blown by the strong wind, and he suddenly felt as if countless small knives were cutting his body, opening up dozens of small wounds. Hiss! Lung Shiqi secretly sucked in a breath of cold air. If I was hit directly, wouldn't it be the same as being executed by 1,000 cuts? After blowing out the strong wind, the bat leader's speed suddenly slowed down. Lung Shiqi's eyes lit up, and he put away his sword and a longbow appeared in his hand. It was the rank 2 spiritual weapon, Tendon-Changing Bow. Lung Shiqi turned around, took out 3 arrows and put them on the bowstring. At this time, the bat leader had already opened its claws and rushed over. Bang! Lung Shiqi shouted again, and then an earth pillar as thick as an arm suddenly drilled out of the ground and hit the bat leader in the air. Although the earth pillar's attack was just a tickle to the bat leader, and only delayed it for a blink of an eye. However, in this blink of an eye, Lung Shiqi's 3 arrows were already shot out. So, the 3 arrows shot towards the bat leader in a triangular formation. Unfortunately, the bat leader's body was very big, but it was very agile. It kept twisting in the air, and cleverly dodged the 3 arrows. Then the bat leader rushed over again. But what it did not expect was that the 3 arrows that it dodged actually turned around in the air, and continued to shoot towards it. Pew. The 3 arrows hit the bat leader in a row, and the arrows were nailed to its back. Although the bat leader was also a rank 1 peak monster, its body was much weaker than the claw wolf. It immediately let out a silent roar, and its body swayed in the air. Lung Shiqi's expression was cold, and 2 more arrows appeared in his hand, and he shot the arrows in one breath. The 2 arrows pierced through the bat leader's wings, causing it to fall to the ground. In the next moment, the sword arrived. Chapter 88. After a while, Lung Shiqi adjusted himself after killing the strange bird leader, and finally stepped into the last area. This was a circular space with a radius of several tens of feet. At the end, there was something that looked like a cage. Lung Shiqi channeled his spirit energy into his eyes and looked carefully. It was a round door with an unknown array engraved around it. However, the array was now dim. In the middle, there were a dozen thick iron pillars that seemed to be imprisoning something. This is the final battle. Lung Shiqi muttered. However, he did not continue to move forward because he knew that as long as he took another step, the final monster, the spiritual ruin beast king, would break free. Looking back at the monsters he had killed along the way, it was to prevent outsiders from entering, and also to seal the spiritual ruin beast king. Now that all the monsters outside were killed by Lung Shiqi, the seal naturally no longer existed. According to Lung Shiqi's guess, the previous 2 elite monsters were peak rank 1 monsters. Then, how strong would the final boss be? The spiritual ruin beast king was probably a rank 2 monster. A rank 2 monster was equivalent to a spirit cultivator in the spirit transformation realm. It was even stronger than a normal spirit cultivator in the spirit transformation realm. Lung Shiqi had never seen a rank 2 monster before, let alone fight one. However, just killing the sharp claw wolves had already made him use all his strength. How would he face a rank 2 monster? Of course, Lung Shiqi was also prepared. Lung Shiqi took out the tendon-changing bow again. He did not use a normal arrow, but an arrow that was not an arrow from the system backpack. It was a 2-foot-long green cone. It was slightly thicker in the middle and thinner towards the sides. This was something that the Yushu clan found on Wuqing after destroying the Twin Heroes Hall. Rank 2 spirit weapon cloud-piercing shuttle. It was also a one-time use rank 2 spirit weapon. Its lethality was extremely strong. At that time, Wuqing was ambushed by the Delta Origi and was instantly killed. He died before he could use this trump card. Otherwise, he would have had a chance to resist. In the end, this item fell into the hands of Lung Shiqi. Next, Lung Shiqi carefully placed one end of the cloud-piercing shuttle on the bowstring. He circulated his spirit force and the cloud-piercing shuttle immediately lit up with a faint green light. A sharp feeling came from it. This immediately increased Lung Shiqi's confidence. Then, Lung Shiqi continued to draw his bow and slowly moved forward. Roar! After Lung Shiqi took a few steps, a deafening roar resounded through the entire space. An abnormally tall demonic beast suddenly appeared behind the round door, but it was trapped by more than 10 iron pillars. However, the demonic beast stretched out its terrifyingly thick arms and grabbed the iron pillar. With a series of creaking sounds, the iron pillar was actually torn open by the demonic beast. Hong long long. The demonic beast suddenly leaped out, and its mountain-like body heavily smashed onto the ground, causing the surroundings to faintly tremble. Upon closer inspection, this demonic beast looked like a giant ape, similar to the ape-shaped puppet they encountered not long ago. However, this demonic beast's entire body was covered in a layer of thick and ferocious armor. Even its head was covered. It could be said that it was armed to the teeth. Only right above its abdomen was a fist-sized hole, the shape of which was exactly the same as the round door behind it. The demonic beast's aura was so strong that it was terrifying. Lung Shiqi could feel a heavy pressure on his shoulders even though he was standing far away. This was the final boss of the Spiritual Ruin instance. Rank 2 Demonic Beast, Spiritual Ruin Beast King. Roar roar roar. The Spiritual Ruin Beast King was freed and immediately roared excitedly. Waves of sound blew over, causing Lung Shiqi's clothes to flutter. Lung Shiqi could not help but narrow his eyes, and a shocking battle intent flashed in his eyes. The Spiritual Ruin Beast King waved its arms and continuously smashed its chest muscles. Lung Shiqi was constantly looking for an opportunity. Then, the Spiritual Ruin Beast King raised its arms high and opened its bloody mouth, not knowing what it was going to do. Opportunity! Lung Shiqi's eyes lit up. He loosened his numb right hand, and the cloud-piercing shuttle turned into a sharp green light and shot out. And its target was the hole in the middle of the Spiritual Ruin Beast King's body. Poochie, the cloud-piercing shuttle arrived in an instant. The Spiritual Ruin Beast King did not even have time to react before it pierced into the hole. The Spiritual Ruin Beast King's body froze. It definitely did not expect that it would be ambushed while it was still in the joy of being freed. A piercing pain instantly spread throughout its body. The Spiritual Ruin Beast King could not help but roar. Its bloody eyes opened wide and stared at Lung Shiqi. Then, it opened its bloody mouth, and was about to pounce over and tear Lung Shiqi into pieces. But Lung Shiqi's expression did not change. He put away the tendon-changing bow, opened his left hand, and softly said a word, "Explode." Boom. Then the cloud-piercing shuttle that pierced into the hole in the spiritual ruin beast king's body suddenly exploded. Suddenly, a large amount of viscous blood mixed with pieces of internal organs spewed out from the hole in the spiritual ruin beast king's body and mouth. Before they even fought, the spiritual ruin beast king was already injured. And it was an internal injury. Even so, Lung Shiqi did not dare to let his guard down. This was because the spiritual ruin beast king was charging towards them like a moving mountain. The spiritual ruin beast king had not even gotten close, but the heat wave came first. Lung Shiqi immediately used Ghost Parade and Confusion steps to dodge. But unexpectedly, the spiritual ruin beast king suddenly jumped up and smashed towards where Lung Shiqi was. Boom! With a sound, a 2-chi deep hole appeared on the ground. And Lung Shiqi's figure was long gone. Right now, Lung Shiqi was actually behind the spiritual ruin beast king. Lung Shiqi held the sword hilt and unsheathed it. The moment it was unsheathed, it lit up with a dazzling sword light, and fiercely stood on the spiritual ruin beast king's tail. The only part of the spiritual ruin beast king's body that was exposed outside of its armor was its tail. The sword light slashed on the thick tail, but to Lung Shiqi's surprise, this gale cut only cut halfway and did not cut off the spiritual ruin beast king's tail. The spiritual ruin beast king had already reacted. It suddenly swung its tail and directly slapped Lung Shiqi away. Lung Shiqi's body slammed onto the ground and slid far away. The blood in his body was in turmoil, and he could not help but spit out a mouthful of blood. What a strong physical body! Lung Shiqi exclaimed to himself. That gale cut was a level 2 spiritual technique at the perfection stage. It was very powerful, and Lung Shiqi was very comfortable using it. And his sword was also a level 3 spiritual weapon. Even so, it could not cut off the spiritual ruin beast king's tail. He really did not expect a level 2 monster's physical body to be so strong. But Lung Shiqi immediately stopped thinking about it. He still had a trace of confidence because he still had a trump card that he had not used. He might be able to kill this spiritual ruin beast king. The battle intent in his eyes increased. Chapter 90. The spiritual ruin beast king's tail was able to injure Lung Shiqi. Fortunately, his body was quite strong, otherwise his flesh would have been torn apart. A rank 2 monster was on a completely different level from a rank 1 monster. Whether it was strength, defense, or speed, they were all much stronger than a rank 1 monster. In fact, he even gained a bit of intelligence. When the spiritual ruin beast king saw Lung Shiqi fall to the ground, it raised its arms above its head and slammed them into the ground. But the strange thing was, even though it slammed down with such a heavy fist, the ground was not damaged at all. Lung Shiqi's eyes widened as if he thought of something. He immediately slapped the ground with one hand, and his body stood up. Then, he jumped high into the air. At this time, with the spiritual ruin beast king as the center, the ground around it began to tremble violently. A terrifying wave of spirit power burst out. Instantly, the ground cracked and rocks flew everywhere. Fortunately, Lung Shiqi realized what the spiritual ruin beast king was going to do and jumped into the air. But what he did not expect was that the spiritual ruin beast king grabbed with both hands and pulled out a huge rock from the ground. It suddenly threw it out and smashed towards Lung Shiqi, who was still in midair. Lung Shiqi's expression changed, but he quickly calmed down. He stretched out his left hand and used the wind slash with his right hand. But this time, the wind slash easily cut the rock that was taller than him in half as if it was tofu. It was Lung Shiqi who used the hand of earth to soften the rock and cut it in half. Then Lung Shiqi finally landed. The moment he landed, he took out the tendon-changing bow and shot 3 arrows. Facing these 3 arrows, the spiritual ruin beast king did not even dodge and continued to charge at Lung Shiqi. The 3 arrows hit the spiritual ruin beast king's armor and were deflected. They could not move an inch. Seeing this, Lung Shiqi's heart sank. Since the sneak attack failed and ranged attacks failed, he could only fight in close range. Lung Shiqi immediately used Ghost Parade and Confusion footwork at the same time, constantly dodging the attacks of the spiritual ruin beast king. Every punch from the spiritual ruin beast king created a huge crater in the ground. Lung Shiqi could not take a single hit and could only keep dodging. Every time he had the chance, his spirit weapon could only scratch the spiritual ruin beast king's armor, and could not hurt it at all. Slowly, the spiritual energy of the Lung Shiqi became less and less, and the speed slowed down. Finally, Lung Shiqi's reaction was a beat too slow. The spiritual ruin beast king's huge fist landed in front of him. Lung Shiqi only had time to release an earth wall, but this earth wall was instantly shattered like paper. The beast king's fist landed squarely on Lung Shiqi's body. Pooh! Lung Shiqi was sent flying like a kite with a broken string. Blood splattered all over the ground. He fell heavily on the ground. His entire body felt like it was falling apart. Not only that, the spiritual energy in his body was also in chaos. Just this one attack instantly caused Lung Shiqi to be heavily injured. Fortunately, Lung Shiqi used the cloud-piercing shuttle to injure the spiritual ruin beast king from the start. He also cultivated a body refinement technique. Otherwise, this punch from the spiritual ruin beast king would have taken his life. This was a rank 2 demon beast. Lung Shiqi could not help but feel a sense of helplessness. You might not be able to break its defense even if you slashed it 10 times. One punch from it would take away half of your life. How could you fight it? But now, Lung Shiqi had no way out. He wanted to run, but there was nowhere to run. The only way to survive was to fight. Fight with his life. Lung Shiqi's heart moved, and a blood-colored pill appeared in his palm. Right now, his expression was very complicated. There was heartache, viciousness, madness, and also hope. The pill in his hand was a rank 4 pill. Blood explosion pill. Seeing that the spiritual ruin beast king was about to attack again, Lung Shiqi did not hesitate and swallowed the blood explosion pill. In the next moment, Lung Shiqi immediately felt the spiritual energy and blood in his body begin to boil. Waves of powerful energy filled his body. He could not even feel the pain from his injury. Ha! Lung Shiqi suddenly shouted. His body emitted a faint blood glow. It was somewhat similar to Zhang Jiga, but Lung Shiqi's blood glow was more vigorous. Power! 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 It was as if endless power was constantly surging in Lung Shiqi's body. Even his face was a little distorted, and a layer of red light appeared in his eyes. The spiritual ruin beast king did not care about Lung Shiqi. It punched again. Lung Shiqi did not dodge this time. He also punched. This punch was incomparably ferocious. It was as if a ferocious tiger was treading on the waves, directly attacking the waves. At this critical moment, he finally merged the wave-breaking fist, tiger roaring fist, and triple fold palm together. It became the tiger wave stepping fist. When the two fists met, a terrifying shockwave exploded. With Lung Shiqi and the spiritual ruin beast king as the center, the ground cracked and even sank a few inches. The scene of the two fists meeting was a little strange. But what was even stranger and more surprising was that Lung Shiqi did not even take half a step back. The moment he punched out, he finally completely fused the three waves tiger break fist. One yin and one yang, one bright and one dark, the two forces perfectly fused together, and forcefully blocked the spiritual ruin beast king's punch. And his feet only sank into the ground. It was a world of difference compared to before. As for the spiritual ruin beast king's armor, there were several large cracks, and a surge of internal force ignored the surface defense and entered its palm, destroying its internal meridians and flesh. But at this moment, Lung Shiqi still felt power surging out of his body. He actually felt like he was going to explode. He could not wait to release this power. He roared and attacked. He punched again. It was still the tiger wave stepping fist. The spiritual ruin beast king was stunned at first. With its intelligence, it could not understand how a weak insect could suddenly become so strong. But out of its violent instincts, the spiritual ruin beast king still punched back. Boom, 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 boom. One man and one beast just stood there and punched at each other. The ground around them had already sunk more than a foot deep because of the impact. The armor on the spiritual ruin beast king's fists were completely shattered, and its fists were covered in blood. Lung Shiqi was not in a good state either. His fists were a bloody mess. No matter how strong he was, the strength of his body did not change. If this continued, Lung Shiqi's arms would be broken sooner or later. The pain seemed to make Lung Shiqi regain some consciousness. His eyes flashed and a red light flashed. He instantly appeared behind the spiritual ruin beast king. With a zung sound, the spirit blade was unsheathed. The blade drew a beautiful crescent blood-colored blade ray. The blood-red blade aura instantly cut through the spiritual ruin beast king's thigh, destroying the armor on it as easily as breaking rotten wood. The blade aura cut deeply into the flesh. The spiritual ruin beast king immediately staggered and lost its balance. Using this opportunity, Lung Shiqi swung out another blade ray and directly cut off the spiritual ruin beast king's tail. Chapter 91. Lung Shiqi cut off the spiritual ruin beast king's tail in one strike. The tail was the key to a monster's balance. The sudden loss of its tail caused the spiritual ruin beast king to lose its balance and fall heavily to the ground. The spiritual ruin beast king couldn't help but cry out in pain. However, the brutality in its two blood-red eyes became even stronger. It opened its bloody mouth and specks of blood quickly gathered in its mouth. Lung Shiqi's expression changed when he saw this. He quickly retreated and with a thought, 3 thick earth walls rose up from the ground. The moment the earth walls rose up, a pillar of red light shot out from the spiritual ruin beast king's mouth. The 3 earthen walls were instantly submerged by the red light as if they were nothing. At this moment, Lung Shiqi had already teleported far away. Unexpectedly, the spiritual ruin beast king turned its head and controlled the red beam of light to sweep towards Lung Shiqi. Wherever it passed, the earth and rocks would fly and become a mess. Lung Shiqi immediately moved and used the ghost parade and confusion steps to the extreme. He teleported a dozen times and flashed to the side of the spiritual ruin beast king. Then he jumped high and landed on the spiritual ruin beast king's head. Then he slammed his fists down. Boom boom. Bang. Lung Shiqi's fist slammed into the spiritual ruin beast king's head. The two forces, one light and one dark, tore apart its helmet and destroyed the insides of its head. At the same time, this power caused the spiritual ruin beast king to involuntarily close its mouth. The red beam of light instantly stopped, and instead, there was a series of explosions coming from its mouth. There was even the smell of something burning coming from it. Roar, roar, roar. The spiritual ruin beast king roared into the sky as it waved its arms wildly. Lung Shiqi quickly jumped up from its head. While dodging the attack, he twisted his body in the air, and a silver spear appeared in his hand. In midair, the Lung Shiqi swung his spear and drew a huge bloody cross in the air. Immediately after, the silver spear tip exploded with a piercing blood-red light. Lung Shiqi's right arm bulged as he used all of his strength to shoot out the silver spear. This was the heavy kill cross spear. The silver spear shot out with a bloody cross and pierced into the spiritual ruin beast king's bloody mouth. The mouth was definitely the weakest. The silver spear directly pierced through the spiritual ruin beast king's head and nailed the spiritual ruin beast king to the ground. At this time, Lung Shiqi suddenly felt a surge of exhaustion in his body, and he accidentally fell from the sky. Lung Shiqi felt the explosive power in his body disappear as quickly as it came. At this moment, it was receding like the tide. Lung Shiqi turned his head to look at the dying spiritual ruin beast king not far away. He knew that he had to end the battle quickly. Immediately, a vicious look flashed across his eyes. Lung Shiqi quickly arrived in front of the spiritual ruin beast king. With a shake of his spirit sword, dozens of channel opening sword chi entered the spiritual ruin beast king's mouth. The invisible sword chi immediately killed its life force. Lung Shiqi was still not at ease. He reached out his left hand and a fiery red bead appeared in his palm. He threw the bead into the hole in the spiritual ruin beast king's body, and then immediately retreated. Just as Lung Shiqi retreated dozens of feet, there was a loud boom from the hole in the spiritual ruin beast king. Large flames burst out and completely engulfed the spiritual ruin beast king. This was Lung Shiqi's last trump card, fire bead. Huff huff. At this moment, Lung Shiqi felt like his body was hollowed out as he panted heavily. His body's strength was quickly fading. He couldn't even hold his weapon, and it fell to the ground. In the end, Lung Shiqi didn't even have the strength to stand and sat on the ground. Lung Shiqi's eyes were locked on the spiritual ruin beast king. Although it was lying on the ground motionless, Lung Shiqi still had a question in his heart. Is it dead? If the spiritual ruin beast king didn't die like this, then Leng Shiqi had to admit defeat. Just as Leng Shiqi's heart was beating like a drum, someone seemed to know his question and came to answer it for him. A light blue door suddenly appeared beside Leng Shiqi, and a platform rose up from the center of the ground. A silver-white box was placed on top of the platform. A line of words that only Leng Shiqi could see appeared in front of him. Congratulations, host, for passing the spiritual ruin instance. Completion rate 100%. Please check your reward. Seeing this line of words, Leng Shiqi could finally confirm that the spiritual ruin beast king was indeed dead. The huge rock in his heart finally fell to the ground. He simply laid down on the ground, facing upwards to form a big shape. The pale Leng Shiqi panted heavily and even coughed violently a few times. Every time he coughed out a bit of blood. He looked inside himself and found that more than 50% of his meridians were damaged. The most serious ones were almost broken. Other than that, there were wounds of varying depths all over his body. Especially his hands, they were a bloody mess. The spiritual qi in his body had been completely depleted. Ever since Leng Shiqi came to this world and came to Blood Mist Island, he had never suffered such serious injuries. But at the same time, he had never fought to his heart's content. At this moment, Leng Shiqi suddenly laughed. At first, his laughter was very soft, but it gradually became louder and louder. He didn't even stop when he accidentally aggravated his injuries. Rank 2 monster, that was a rank 2 monster. It finally died at his hands. Leng Shiqi had a majestic feeling in his heart that needed to be expressed. After a while, Leng Shiqi finally calmed down. He didn't rush to open the treasure chest and leave. Instead, he sat down and swallowed a few pills. Then he took out spirit stones to recover his spirit qi. The instance had a time limit of 1 day. Leng Shiqi estimated that 6 to 8 hours had passed. He still had a lot of time to do one thing. Leng Shiqi sat for a full 2 hours. At this moment, Leng Shiqi opened his eyes. There was a helpless look in his eyes. He smiled bitterly. I didn't expect my internal injuries to be so serious. Many of his meridians were damaged. His spirit qi recovered abnormally slowly. And right now, he could only recover about 70% of his spirit qi. Other than that, Leng Shiqi's face was still pale. His spirit qi could be quickly recovered with pills and spirit stones, but his blood qi could only be slowly recovered. Leng Shiqi shook his head and stood up. He walked to the huge corpse of the spiritual ruin beast king, and pulled out the silver spear. However, there were several dents on the tip of the spear. It was obvious that it had been scrapped. Leng Shiqi did a rough calculation. He had lost the cloud-piercing shuttle, the silver spear, and the explosive bead in this instance. What made his heart ache the most was the rank 4 blood explosion pill. He helplessly said to himself, I lost so much this time. I don't know if the reward can make up for it. But before that, I should collect some interest. Chapter 92. Leng Shiqi sold the silver spear to the system for a few digits worth of system currency. Then he pulled out a dagger from his ankle. Holding the dagger, Leng Shiqi carefully cut open the spiritual ruin beast king's head. The dead spiritual ruin beast king's body was not as hard as before, so the dagger easily went in. After a while, Leng Shiqi was pleasantly surprised as he pulled out a thumbnail-sized red bead from the spiritual ruin beast king's head. Upon closer inspection, there seemed to be a few streaks of blood slowly swimming in the bead. This was the spiritual ruin beast king's beast core. Only a tier 2 demonic beast would be able to refine a demonic core in its mind. Moreover, this demonic core looked extraordinary. Leng Shiqi nodded in satisfaction and put the beast core into the system space. Just this Yao core alone was worth several weapons he had lost. After putting away the beast core, Leng Shiqi's hands began to form seals, and the spiritual ruin beast king's corpse in front of him began to twitch strangely. Afterwards, several thick pillars of blood spurted out from the spiritual ruin beast king's wounds and gathered together. In the end, they formed a huge ball of blood. A heavy smell of blood radiated out. Gradually, the blood ball began to shrink, and finally shrank to the size of a fist. At this time, Leng Shiqi was covered in cold sweat. He already had internal injuries, and refining the beast blood for a long time consumed both spirit power and mental strength, so he was starting to feel tired. However, he could not give up on the rank 2 beast blood, so he could only grit his teeth and persevere. After Leng Shiqi took out the demonic core and refined the demonic blood, he walked to the front of the silver-white treasure chest. Opening the treasure chest, there were a few things inside, and the system sent out a notification. Congratulations to the host for obtaining Black Tortoise Soul. Congratulations to the host for obtaining Beginner Backpack. Congratulations to the host for obtaining Flowing Ink Robe. Congratulations to the host for obtaining Billowing Starlight. Congratulations to the host for obtaining Rank 2 Spiritual Skill, Spirit Attack. Congratulations to the host for obtaining Experience Ball. There were a lot of things, but Leng Shiqi wasn't happy. He even wanted to say, "That's it? I fought with my life on the line and almost died here. Rank 4 Blood Explosion Pill, and his injuries were all in exchange for this?" At a glance, there wasn't even a single Tier 3 resource. Leng Shiqi suddenly felt like he had suffered a huge loss. He secretly decided to throw away the next instance dungeon card that he got in the future. Leng Shiqi immediately took out a turtle shell from the box and threw it on the ground. That tortoise shell was the Black Tortoise Soul. The name sounded very powerful, but it was actually the lowest grade material used to strengthen equipment in the game world. But here, it was completely useless. Then Leng Shiqi took out a burlap bag and a line of words appeared in front of him. You can add 6 slots to your inventory. Oh, a hint of joy flashed through Leng Shiqi's eyes. Ever since he opened his backpack, he had always felt that there were not enough slots. First of all, food and water took up 2 slots. In addition, he had several types of weapons that he was good at, as well as some personal items and trump cards, etc. 6 grids were simply not enough. Then Leng Shiqi put the burlap bag into the system space. Instantly there were 6 more slots. Excluding the slots that the backpack took up, he now had 11 slots that he could use. Leng Shiqi nodded slightly. Although this burlap bag couldn't increase his combat power, it was more practical. Voila then, Leng Shiqi took out the ink-flowing robe and shook it in his hand. The ink-flowing robe was black, but there were a few strands of silver lining at the cuffs and collar. The material of the robe was unusually smooth to the touch. Upon closer inspection, there were even traces of spiritual power flowing on it. This is a spiritual weapon? Leng Shiqi touched the robe and said with a bit of surprise. He was not unfamiliar with spiritual weapons, but 90% of the spiritual weapons that he had seen were weapons. Very few of them were defensive and special types. For example, Mo Yi's Vambrace or the cloud-piercing shuttle that Leng Shiqi used to attack the spiritual ruins Beast King. These types of spiritual weapons were very rare, but at least he had seen them before. But he had never seen a set of clothes that were all spiritual weapons. Even he couldn't tell what grade of spiritual weapon it was. Swords, spears, sticks and other spiritual weapons were all refined, but how was this set of clothes made? Leng Shiqi pondered for a while and shook his head. Since this item was produced by the system, then everything was possible. Leng Shiqi had just gone through a series of battles, and the black cloak on him was already tattered. Then he took off the cloak and changed into the ink-flowing robe. The clothes fit him well and looked good. It looked like a battle suit, but also a little like a windbreaker. What was even more peculiar was that Leng Shiqi immediately felt a weak warmth flowing through his body. Vaguely, even his injuries seemed to be getting better. Leng Shiqi was surprised and happy at the same time. He touched the sleeves of the robe lovingly. Then the spiritual power in his body flowed into the ink-flowing robe. On the surface of the robe, lines of silver lines appeared. The spiritual power flowed along the silver lines and formed a layer of silver film on the surface of the robe. Leng Shiqi's heart skipped a beat. He suddenly drew out a dagger and slashed his left arm. Then a surprising scene appeared. The moment the dagger stabbed into his arm, it seemed to have stabbed into an extremely slippery object and slashed to the side. Good stuff. Leng Shiqi couldn't help but shout out these 3 words. The value of this ink-flowing robe was definitely not inferior to a 3rd-tier spiritual weapon. At this moment, Leng Shiqi's mood finally improved a little. He then reached out his left hand and picked up the blue and green ball of light from the box. The moment Lung Shiqi's hand touched the ball of light suddenly went into his palm and disappeared. However, Lung Shiqi didn't panic because he saw a tattoo appear on his left palm. The shape of the tattoo was almost the same as the ball of light just now. At the same time, Lung Shiqi also saw the system prompt and knew that this shining starlight was also a second-tier spiritual weapon. What was different was that this type of spiritual weapon was specially used to amplify spiritual skills. Lung Shiqi immediately moved his spiritual power, and the tattoo on his left hand immediately lit up. He quickly formed a few spiritual seals and used his only spiritual skill, the centipede curse. A red circle of light appeared. In the circle of light, there was a lifelike centipede constantly twisting its body. Lung Shiqi carefully observed and secretly nodded. This centipede is indeed a bit bigger than before, but the amplification effect isn't very obvious. This waving radiance starlight conforms to the norm. He withdrew his spiritual power, and the light in his left palm disappeared. He then took out the second-tier spiritual skill, Spirit Strike. This Spirit Strike was a spiritual skill. Discovered second-tier spiritual skill, Spirit Strike. Learn. Consume 1 skill point. Yes. Lung Shiqi's consciousness was immediately pulled into the system space. After repeating this a few times, Spirit Strike had reached perfection. With a thought, Lung Shiqi's left palm flashed with light. Then he suddenly pushed forward and a strong wind swept out. Then there was no then. Lung Shiqi was stunned. Chapter 93. That's it. Lung Shiqi looked at the power of the rank 2 spiritual skill, and a look of astonishment appeared on his face. In fact, Lung Shiqi had high hopes for this spirit attack spell. Otherwise he wouldn't have leveled it up to perfection in one go. The main reason was because in his impression, spiritual techniques were all infinitely powerful. For example, the 10 soul mage puppets in the Battle of Puppets, each spell could take a life. However, Lung Shiqi's spirit attack blew out a gust of wind. Although the wind wasn't small, was it worthy of a rank 2 spell? At this time, Lung Shiqi narrowed his eyes and began to recall the information about this spell in the game world. Gradually, Lung Shiqi's eyes lit up. He remembered that this spell actually had a prerequisite skill. The use of spirit attack required the use of elemental power. In the game world, there were 3 types of elemental power that could be used interchangeably. If different elemental powers were used, the power and effect of spirit attack would be different. For example, if the fire attribute was used, it would instantly spit out a majestic flame. If the ice attribute was used, it would release a cold frost that could freeze people. If the lightning attribute was used, it would pave a path of lightning. Thinking of this, Lung Shiqi was a bit confused because he didn't have any elemental powers and didn't know how to obtain them. Perhaps when his cultivation was high, various types of elemental powers would appear. However, in his memory he only knew that there were 3 realms, the Spirit Gathering Realm, the Pure Spirit Realm, and the Spirit Transformation Realm. He didn't know what the realms after that were. Sigh, what a pity. It was a pity that he could not unleash the power that he should have after cultivating a rank 2 spiritual skill. In the end, Lung Shiqi picked up the last experience ball in the box. In his memory, there was no such thing in the game world. However, when Lung Shiqi saw the use of the experience ball, his expression changed, and he instantly stuffed it into the system space. It's worth it, he mumbled softly. After counting all the loot, Lung Shiqi stepped into the light blue door and left the dungeon. Soon after, the ground beneath his feet disappeared, and the scenery around him changed rapidly. In the blink of an eye, he had returned to his own cave. Lung Shiqi immediately looked around, but didn't see Purple Feather. This meant that nothing had happened to the Yushu clan while he was in the instance dungeon. After that, Lung Shiqi began to recuperate. The damage to his meridians and the loss of his chi and blood caused him to only be able to display 50 to 60% of his peak strength. In his current state, it was definitely not suitable for him to go out and cause trouble. It was more important for him to focus on recuperating. It wasn't until 4 days later that Lung Shiqi's injuries were mostly healed. Although he hadn't fully recovered, he was able to display about 80% of his strength. Then, Leng Shiqi left the cave and went to the Yushu clan to find Yushu. When Yushu saw Leng Shiqi's extremely good-looking ink-flowing clothes, he immediately touched it. Drool flowed out from the corner of his mouth as he licked his face and said. He licked his lips and said, "Brother Dark Crow, where did you get this robe? It's so cool. I don't know if you noticed that this robe suits my temperament. Why don't you let me wear it?" Leng Shiqi rolled his eyes at Yushu and said, "Prepare something for me." Yushu saw that Leng Shiqi ignored him and started talking about serious matters. He sighed and said, "What do you want?" "Spiritual skills. Show me all the new spiritual techniques you've acquired. Also, find a spear-like spiritual weapon. It's best if it's a rank 2 spiritual weapon." Yushu had a look of doubt on his face, but he quickly concealed it and said, "Okay, wait a moment." In less than the time to brew a cup of tea, Yushu returned. He tightly hugged a small box and walked in with a spear on his shoulder. "There are only 2 spear-like spiritual weapons. They're both rank 1 spiritual weapons. The one I brought is better. The spiritual skills are in this box," Yushu said while his eyes were focused on Leng Shiqi's expression. When Leng Shiqi saw the rank 1 spear, a look of displeasure flashed through his eyes. The current Leng Shiqi had comprehended his own moves in sword, saber, and fist techniques. Moreover, these 3 moves were all powerful and had their own characteristics. The chaotic blossom dazzling eyes was very flexible. It was very useful whether it was one-on-one or against many, especially after incorporating the unblocking meridian sword chi. Its power increased greatly, and it could even block meridians. The waning moon rapid light slash was unparalleled in its sharpness. Even the claws of the mutated beast and the sharp-clawed wolf were cut off by this slash. It could be said that no rank 1 monster could withstand this slash. There was a feeling of being able to end everything with one slash. The ferocious tiger wave stomping fist was a combination of hardness and gentleness. Especially the hidden force that was hard to defend against, and sometimes had miraculous effects. These 3 moves were very powerful, but at the same time, Leng Shiqi was unable to increase their power in a short period of time. Then Leng Shiqi planned to try to incorporate other types of spiritual skills. Spear, arrow, and spiritual skills were all in his list of options. Leng Shiqi already had the tendon-changing bow and the billowing starlight. He didn't lack any spiritual weapons for arrow and spiritual skills. He only lacked a spiritual spear. However, the Yushu clan didn't have a rank 2 spiritual spear. This inevitably disappointed him. Yushu sensed Leng Shiqi's displeasure, and his heart skipped a beat. He hurriedly said, "Hee brother Leng Dark Crow. Right now, the clan doesn't have a rank 2 spiritual spear. Give me a few days and I will definitely get one for you." Leng Shiqi waved his hand. "No matter, I didn't tell you in advance. I don't blame you." With that, Leng Shiqi directly opened the small box and took out spiritual skills one after another. Yushu secretly heaved a sigh of relief and stood at the side. What surprised Leng Shiqi was that he actually took out a total of 9 spiritual skills from the box. Yushu's voice sounded at the right time. 5 of the spiritual skills were originally collected by the Twin Heroes Hall. The other 4 were obtained from the eruption of resources 2 days ago. Leng Shiqi nodded and began to look at the spiritual skills one by one. Yushu on the side was about to leave when Leng Shiqi said indifferently, "Just do it here. Didn't you already guess it? Why are you still leaving?" Yushu smiled embarrassedly and subconsciously wiped the non-existent cold sweat on his forehead. He obediently stood in place and didn't make a sound. Yushu knew that Leng Shiqi had many spiritual skills. However, he had personally seen Leng Shiqi use Wind Slash several times in a row in the Battle of Puppets. It was even stronger than his own Wind Slash. Yushu hadn't taught this Wind Slash to anyone else. He had only shown it to Leng Shiqi a few times. How did Leng Shiqi know Wind Slash? Yushu had already guessed that Leng Shiqi had a photographic memory and terrifying perception at the same time. However, he was only half right. Chapter 94. Leng Shiqi didn't care about Yushu's thoughts. Not to mention that he was already controlled by the heart-destroying pill. He wasn't afraid of Yushu having any thoughts. Ever since he returned from the Spiritual Ruins Instance Dungeon, Leng Shiqi's mentality and outlook had changed slightly. If it was before entering the dungeon, Leng Shiqi might have given Yushu a few pointers, but now he didn't have such plans. He laid out the 9 spiritual techniques one by one and skimmed through them first. Among them, there were 2 rank 2 spiritual skills, Rainbow Cauldron Sword Technique and Formation Breaking Overlord Spear. The rest were all rank 1 spiritual skills. The Rainbow Cauldron Sword Technique was the spiritual skill that Wu Qing and Wu Xian cultivated. It was a sword technique that had both offense and defense. Leng Shiqi picked up the sword technique and directly used his skill points to learn it. He had 2 rank 1 and 1 rank 3 sword technique, and this Rainbow Cauldron Sword Technique just happened to make up for it. The Formation Breaking Overlord Spear only had 1 move, which was the kind of spear technique that charged forward bravely. The rest of the rank 1 spiritual skills were of various types, so there was no need to mention them. Another thing that Leng Shiqi was a little surprised was that there was actually a spiritual skill. Ice Spread. This was a pleasant surprise. Then Leng Shiqi slowly and carefully looked through each spiritual skill. In reality, he used his skill points to learn them all, and would upgrade them when he returned. At this time, Leng Shiqi's information had become, name, Leng Shiqi Lu Xingji Cultivation. 6th level of the Pure Spirit Realm Cultivation Method. Rank 3 Cultivation Method Moonlight Cloud Manual Rank 3 Cultivation Method Beast Origin Demon Breaking Technique. Incomplete, Bloodline. Spiritual Skills. Rank 1 Spiritual Skill Ice Spread Beginner Rank 2 Spiritual Skill Rainbow Cauldron Sword Technique Beginner Rank 2 Spiritual Skill Formation Breaking Overlord Spear Beginner Rank 2 Spiritual Skill Spirit Attack Perfection Rank 2 Spiritual Skill Wave Breaking Fist Perfection Rank 2 Spiritual Skill Ghost Archery Perfection Rank 2 Spiritual Skill Gale / Perfection Rank 2 Spiritual Skill Heavy Cross Spear Perfection Rank 3 Spiritual Skill Channel Piercing Sword Aura Perfection. System Coins. 120. After a while, Leng Shiqi put down the last spiritual technique book and changed the topic. What's going on in the desert recently? Yushu pondered for a moment, then sighed and said, Sigh, don't mention it. The 2 forces in the desert, Tuzhuang and Flying Sand Sect, are actually preparing to negotiate for peace. What? Leng Shiqi almost thought that he had misheard. Was there such a thing as making peace on the Blood Fog Island? I've lived long enough to see this. That's right. Wasn't the Wind Valley empty? Originally, Tuzhuang and the Flying Sand Sect were fighting over the territory. But later on it was unknown who brought up the idea of making peace. The idea was that there was no need to fight. Wouldn't it be fine if each of them occupied an area? It sounded reasonable, but after all, the desert was a place they had managed for a long time. No one wanted to give it up so easily. For the past few days, they have been arguing about who should stay in the desert and who should go to Wind Valley. Many thoughts flashed through Leng Shiqi's mind. Since he wanted to complete the mission, he had to take down the desert. However, there were still 2 forces there. Although the Yushu clan was stronger than any of them, if they wanted to forcefully swallow them, they would have to break a few teeth. This was also why they had to cooperate with the Delta Origi to act when they were dealing with the Twin Heroes Hall. If these 2 forces were killing each other, and their strength continued to weaken, Leng Shiqi would naturally be happy to see it happen. Unexpectedly, they came up with a negotiation. This was a good thing for Tuzhuang and Flying Sand Sect, but it was not good news for Leng Shiqi. First, tell me the information about these 2 forces in detail, Leng Shiqi said. Yushu sorted out the information and said, Tuzhuang, the villa master is Tu Luo. Because the people who started the clan were surnamed Tu, they got this name. Tu Luo is now at the 5th level of the Pure Spirit Realm, and there are 4 Pure Spirit Realm spirit cultivators under him. The sect master of the Flying Sand Sect, Foam Fascia, is also at the 5th level of the Pure Spirit Realm. There are 5 Pure Spirit Realm spirit cultivators under him, but the number of spirit gathering cultivators is less than Tuzhuang. Overall, the 2 sides are evenly matched. It is also because of this that they chose to negotiate. Leng Shiqi continued. Yes, neither of them can do anything to the other. Negotiating for peace is indeed a very wise choice, Yushu said. You said that they have been negotiating for a few days? It doesn't seem to be going well? Leng Shiqi asked. Yushu nodded. That's right, they all want to continue staying in the desert. After all, they are very familiar with the desert. In addition, I heard that there are other forces that have designs on Wind Valley. If they go to Wind Valley, they might make another strong enemy. Leng Shiqi muttered to himself for a moment. We must destroy their peace talks. It's best if they fight, then we can take the opportunity to enter. Destroy? How do we destroy this? Bring people to fight? Leng Shiqi did not pay attention to Yushu's nonsense. He lowered his gaze and started to think. After a moment, Leng Shiqi's eyes lit up and asked, since they are evenly matched, then if an expert joins one side, do you think they will still negotiate? Yushu was a little confused when he heard this. He did not know what Leng Shiqi wanted to do and said, the possibility of this is not very high. After all, one person's strength is limited. One more person might not be able to bring about a huge advantage. The Flying Sand sect has one more pure spirit realm spirit cultivator than Tu Zhuang. Didn't they still agree to the peace talks? I'm talking about an expert. Haha, expert? How tall would that be? The tent is about this tall. Yushu laughed. But as he laughed, he saw Leng Shiqi's unfriendly gaze and immediately stopped. Yushu suddenly thought of something and shouted, don't tell me you want to do it yourself? Leng Shiqi nodded slightly and said, you're not stupid. With Brother Dark Crow's strength, it is indeed possible to break the balance between Tu Zhuang and the Flying Sand sect. However, they will definitely remember you in the battle at the wetlands and know that you are a member of the Yushu clan. They won't let you join their forces so easily. Yushu said hesitantly. Leng Shiqi raised the corner of his mouth and said, Dark Crow is the deputy leader of the Yushu clan. Everyone knows this. But there is one person who is not weaker than Dark Crow, but does not belong to any force. He is the best candidate. When Yushu heard this, he turned his head and stared at the black mask on Leng Shiqi's face. He had been looking at this mask for a long time, and he was used to calling him Brother Dark Crow. He even felt that the person Dark Crow was very familiar, but Yushu seemed to have gradually forgotten the face under the dark golden mask. It was a face that had once made him feel fear and despair. He vaguely knew what Leng Shiqi was thinking, and also knew what he was going to say next, but he still asked, what's the matter? Who is that person? Leng Shiqi took off the dark golden mask that he had been wearing for a long time, revealing a slightly pale and handsome face. He faintly said a word. Me. Chapter 95. Sand. As the name implied, the ground in this area was covered with a layer of dry and hard sand. Even the air felt a little dry. A black-clothed youth walked on the sand with a long sword on his back, making rustling sounds. He was also carrying a round cloth bag in his hand. Leng Shiqi walked and looked at the camp in the distance. That was where the Flying Sand sect was located. The Flying Sand sect was the target that Leng Shiqi chose to join. The Flying Sand sect had one more spirit cultivator in the pure spirit realm than Tu Zhuang, but there were fewer people below, so they were willing to negotiate with Tu Zhuang. If he was an expert at the 6th level of the pure spirit realm, Feng Feisha would most likely give up on the peace talks and even use the peace talks to ambush Tu Zhuang. For Leng Shiqi, the most difficult thing was how to join the Flying Sand sect and make them go back on their word. Who is it? When Leng Shiqi walked to the gate of the Flying Sand sect, the two gatekeepers immediately stopped him and asked sternly. However, Leng Shiqi did not stop. The two of them immediately pulled out their weapons, but in the blink of an eye, Leng Shiqi's figure disappeared in front of their eyes. When they looked again, he had already entered the gate of the Flying Sand sect, and the clothes of the two gatekeepers suddenly tore open. The two of them were so frightened that their faces turned pale and they hurriedly shouted, Someone come quickly. There's an enemy. As soon as he finished speaking, more than 10 people quickly ran over, and even more people ran over. In a moment, dozens of people directly surrounded Leng Shiqi, but they were all spirit cultivators in the spirit gathering realm. They could not sense the aura on Leng Shiqi's body, so they knew that they could not deal with him. So they just surrounded him and did not rush to make a move. At this time, a yellow-faced youth with rough skin walked over. He was the sect master of the Flying Sand sect, Feng Feisha. When a spirit cultivator in the pure spirit realm behind him saw Leng Shiqi, he panicked and revealed a terrified expression. However, everyone's attention was on Leng Shiqi, and no one noticed him. When Feng Feisha heard the commotion, he quickly rushed over. He originally thought that the people of Tuzhuang had gone crazy and were attacking, but he did not expect that there was only one person. However, Feng Feisha subconsciously thought that this person who was surrounded by them could not be underestimated, because he was simply too calm. He was clearly surrounded by an entire faction of people. If a fight broke out, it could be said that he would not be able to escape even if he had wings. He would undoubtedly die. However, this person's face was as calm as the wind, as if the people around him didn't exist. Feng Feisha could feel that this person was not pretending. He really did not put the people around him in his eyes. Don't panic, put down your weapons. I don't think this brother is here to cause trouble for us. Feng Feisha's eyes flashed with a trace of light as he loudly said. When everyone heard this, hesitation appeared on their faces. However, they could not disobey the sect master's words. They put down their weapons, but their vigilance did not decrease in the slightest. Sect Master Feng is indeed smart. I am Leng Shiqi. I am here to give Sect Master Feng a big gift. Leng Shiqi said indifferently, then threw the cloth bag in his hand at Feng Feisha's feet. At this time, Feng Feisha did not pick up the cloth bag. A person next to him picked up the cloth bag knowingly. When he touched the cloth bag, he felt a sticky touch. When he opened it, he saw that there was a head inside. Ah, this is Leng Shuangtian. Leng Shuangtian? Tuzhuang's pure spirit realm spirit cultivator? That's right, he was the one who almost killed me back then. Could it be that this Leng Shiqi killed him? I remember that Leng Shuangtian was at the 3rd level of the pure spirit realm. To be able to kill him, this Leng Shiqi must be even stronger. Seeing Leng Shuangtian's head, the people next to him began to discuss in surprise. Even Feng Feisha was surprised. As an old opponent, he naturally knew how difficult it was to deal with Leng Shuangtian. Leng Shuangtian was definitely Tuzhuang's right-hand man. This person died just like that? Although he was a little happy in his heart, he could not understand why this Leng Shiqi would do this. What was his purpose? Feng Feisha smiled and cupped his fists. Brother Leng's gift is too generous. Feng Feisha is ashamed to accept it. Leng Shiqi naturally understood the meaning of Feng Feisha's words and immediately said, Sect Master Feng can accept it calmly because I am planning to join your sect. This head is my sincerity. When Leng Shiqi said this, it immediately caused a burst of shock. Instead of being happy about the addition of an expert, everyone looked at him suspiciously. Everyone thought that Leng Shiqi must have some ulterior motive. Leng Shiqi glanced around and chuckled. Why are you all so suspicious? I only have one purpose in joining the Flying Sand sect, and that is to save myself. Save yourself? Who did you offend? When Feng Feisha heard this, he was slightly relieved and immediately asked. Yes, because not long ago, I offended the Yushu clan. What? The Yushu clan? Feng Feisha could not help but exclaim. After the puppet war, the entire Blood Mist Island knew how terrifying the Yushu clan was. In terms of strength, they could definitely be ranked in the top 3. Some people even thought that the Yushu clan was the strongest force on Blood Mist Island. This Leng Shiqi offended the Yushu clan, so he came to join the Flying Sand sect? But the Flying Sand sect might not be able to survive. Moreover, what he said might not be true. At this time, the person who was standing behind Feng Feisha, who was frightened just now, walked to his side and whispered a few words. Feng Feisha's expression changed several times after hearing this. From time to time, he would look at Leng Shiqi. In fact, the person who spoke was actually someone from the Beilichuan. He was also one of the people who surrounded and killed Leng Shiqi. He was one of the people who secretly escaped when Blood is no different stopped Leng Shiqi. However, at that time, he was only at the 9th level of the Spirit Gathering realm. Later, he broke through to the Pure Spirit realm and joined the Flying Sand sect. He had just told Feng Feisha about Leng Shiqi's situation. Feng Feisha now knew that Leng Shiqi was not lying. Moreover, he was very powerful. However, he still had a big question in his heart. Thinking of this, Feng Feisha asked, I see. Then why didn't you join Tu Zhuang but join me? Leng Shiqi's mouth moved slightly and said these few words. I met him on the way, so I killed him. Hearing this, Feng Feixia's face darkened. He finally understood. The other party meant that because he met Leng Shuangtian, he killed him and then joined the Flying Sand sect as a show of sincerity. And the deeper meaning was that if he met someone from the Flying Sand sect, he would be holding the head of the Flying Sand sect's member and going to Tu Zhuang. Feng Feixia's face was naturally ugly. He thought to himself, what an arrogant person. However, the more he acted like this, the more Feng Feixia felt that Leng Shiqi simply wanted to find a backer. He also knew that Leng Shiqi would not have any loyalty to him. However, this was not important. What was important was that as long as Leng Shiqi joined, then he would have a way to deal a heavy blow to Tu Zhuang. Thinking of this, Feng Feixia already had an idea in his heart. However, he still wanted to see if Leng Shiqi was worth his protection. If the Flying Sand sect accepted Leng Shiqi, it meant that they would become enemies with the Yushu clan. If they attracted the attention of the Yushu clan because of him, wouldn't the gains not make up for the losses? Therefore, he had to show enough value. How to show his value? That could only be strength. Feng Feixia waved his hand, and the person next to him immediately handed over a long stick. The two ends of the long stick were embedded with a few golden rings. He suddenly stood the long stick up, and the long stick directly sank into the ground. He had no proof, so he had to personally test Leng Shiqi's strength. Thus, Feng Feixia channeled all of his spiritual energy and shouted in a low voice. The Flying Sand sect can protect you, even if the enemy is the Yushu clan. However, it depends on whether you have the qualifications or not. However, before he finished speaking, there was a whoosh sound. Leng Shiqi's cold sword was unsheathed. His body was like the wind, and his sword was like a rainbow. In the blink of an eye, he was in front of Feng Feixia. This was the Rainbow Cauldron Sword Technique's shocking rainbow sword style. Feng Feixia's expression changed slightly. He waved the heavy stick in his hand and smashed down several stick shadows. However, under the stick shadows, there was no sign of Leng Shiqi. Immediately, Feng Feixia felt a chill behind his back. However, he heard Leng Shiqi's strange voice. Now I don't know if I have the qualifications. Chapter 96. That night, Feng Feixia passed down one order after another, and the entire Flying Sand clan quickly began to operate. Remember what you have to do. You may leave. Feng Feixia finished speaking, and the 5 people in front of him got up and left. However, one of them hesitated for a moment and decided to stay. Hua Luo, is there anything else? Feng Feixia asked. Clan Master, I still think that Leng Shiqi is too suspicious. We can't trust him. Hua Luo said in a deep voice. Feng Feixia first looked at him with admiration, then said, of course we can't trust him. We're just taking what we need. We used it to heavily injure Tu Zhuang. And he used our power to make the Yushu clan not dare to touch him. That's all. But Leng Shiqi is so strong. Why would he be afraid of the Yushu clan? Hua Luo thought about how Leng Shiqi instantly defeated his clan master not long ago and was puzzled. Feng Feixia didn't care and said, Hua Luo, you didn't go to the battle at the wetlands, so you don't know the strength of the Yushu clan. Yushu clan's clan master, Yushu, is a very strong person. However, the strongest person in the Yushu clan is not him, but someone called Dark Crow. You don't know how terrifyingly strong that Dark Crow saber technique is. It's terrifying to the point of being breathtaking. Although Leng Shiqi is strong, he definitely won't be able to withstand the combined might of Yushu and Dark Crow. So you're worrying too much. Hearing those words, Hua Luo finally felt relieved. Then he took his leave. At this time, Leng Shiqi was alone in a small tent. The reason why he could successfully join the Flying Sand clan today was because he didn't use any tricks, schemes, or even a single lie. This was because he knew that the leaders who could control a force were all shrewd people. Any schemes and lies could be easily seen through. So Leng Shiqi did the opposite. Everything he said was the truth. He did indeed have a blood feud with the Yushu clan. This was something that could be confirmed very quickly if he sent someone to investigate. It was just that he didn't expect that the Flying Sand sect had someone who had once tried to kill him, and helped him instead. It was also true that the Yushu clan was hunting him down. Before he came, he asked Yushu to release the news that they were looking for traces of Leng Shiqi. And the thing about Leng Shuangtian was also true. Leng Shiqi really happened to meet the people of Tuzhuang halfway. It was their bad luck. Now that Leng Shiqi had successfully joined the Flying Sand sect, there was no need for him to worry about the rest. With the addition of an expert like him, Tuzhuang had lost another spirit cultivator of the pure spirit realm. Under such circumstances, what was the point of talking about a peace treaty? Tonight, Feng Feisha had already begun to plot against Tuzhuang. He only needed to wait quietly. Late at night, Leng Shiqi sneaked out of the camp and sent a message to Yushu through Ziyu. The next day, the people of the Flying Sand sect and Tuzhuang agreed to meet at the center of the desert to continue the peace talks. Feng Feisha brought 2 pure spirit realm cultivators and 20 spirit gathering realm cultivators. Tuzhuang did the same. And Leng Shiqi was hidden among the spirit gathering realm cultivators. At this moment he felt a little speechless because Feng Feisha's plan was almost the same as Ji Tianyi. They both wanted him to disguise himself as a spirit gathering realm cultivator, and then ambush him. However, Feng Feisha was more decisive than Ji Tianyi. His target was the master of Tuzhuang, Tulu. At this time, Leng Shiqi also saw Tulu. Half of his face was covered by his hair, so he couldn't see his face clearly. According to Feng Feisha, when the corrosive rain fell, half of Tulu's face was corroded by the corrosive rain, so it was always covered. Feng Feisha and Tulu didn't have anything good to say when they met. Both sides had been fighting for so long, so the accumulated hatred was very deep. Even when they came to negotiate, their tone was very aggressive. Leng Shiqi didn't care about what they said. He was just secretly waiting for the signal to make a move. Not long after, Feng Feisha and Tuzhuang started to quarrel. It seemed like the negotiation had broken down. They even started to fight. But the strange thing was that the people around didn't react at all. No one came forward to help, as if this kind of thing happened often. The truth was that it was like this. Everyone was already used to it because they knew that Tulu and Feng Feisha couldn't do anything to each other. Moreover, they didn't even use their weapons. It was just a symbolic fight. So no one moved. However, at this moment, something unexpected happened. The 2 pure spirit realm cultivators of the Flying Sand sect walked forward, as if they wanted to pull Feng Feisha back. But halfway, they suddenly pulled out their weapons and attacked Tulu. At the same time, Feng Feisha also waved his heavy rod and smashed it down again and again. Tulu's face changed. He quickly pulled out 2 pitch-black daggers from his waist to block. But he was already caught off guard. He was still fighting 1 against 3. In the blink of an eye, he was hit by Feng Feisha's rod and flew out. It was also at this moment that Tuzhuang's 2 pure spirit realm cultivators finally rushed to his side and glared at Feng Feisha and the others. Tulu's face was incomparably ashen. He shouted, "Feng Feisha, are you crazy?" However, Feng Feisha didn't want to talk nonsense with him. He directly brought his people and rushed over. Tulu also waved his hand. The people behind him all rushed over, and the 2 groups of people collided. But Tulu couldn't understand. They had the same number of people, and were evenly matched in strength. If they continued to fight, other than increasing the number of casualties, there wouldn't be any results. Then a dang sound was heard. Tulu blocked Feng Feisha's rod. At this moment, Feng Feisha revealed a smile and said, "Tulu, why didn't Leng Shuangtian come?" When Feng Feisha mentioned Leng Shuangtian, Tulu's heart suddenly thumped. Yesterday, he sent Leng Shuangtian to bring a few people to the mountain to collect food and water. But he still hadn't returned. Tulu already knew that something was wrong, but he didn't expect that this was actually Feng Feisha's doing. Leng Shuangtian was an expert second only to you and Tuzhuang. He's dead. Do you think I still need to negotiate with you? Right now my people are all attacking your camp. I'm only here to delay you for you," Feng Feisha said with a look of success. When he said this, Tuzhuang's whole body trembled. His eyes widened. Obviously he didn't expect Feng Feisha to do this. While Tulu was still in shock, Feng Feisha suddenly shouted, "Kill!" Tulu's face also turned ruthless. Since he had already reached this step, he could only fight to the death. Unfortunately, just as he wanted to fight to the death, a black figure flashed over like a ghost. Before the person arrived, the sword chi arrived first. Pupiyu. Before Tulu could react, 2 deep sword wounds suddenly appeared on his legs. Furthermore, 2 waves of energy had invaded his meridians, sealing off the circulation of his spirit chi. Then a rainbow-like sword light pierced over. Chapter 97. The chapter order is wrong. This is Chapter 97, and Chapter 96 is below. Sandfield, Flying Sand Clan's camp. Yushu commanded his subordinates to take care of everything, but Lung Shiqi was no longer here. After all, Lung Shiqi was not a member of the Yushu clan. Yushu told the public that he made a deal with Lung Shiqi. Lung Shiqi helped him occupy the sandfield, and the Yushu clan no longer pursued Lung Shiqi. Therefore, Lung Shiqi returned to his cave and was ready to receive the mission reward. Now the Yushu clan occupied a total of 3 areas, namely the sandfield, the withered forest, and the fog area. The Yushu clan was secretly controlled by Lung Shiqi, so his mission was completed. The mission reward was an intermediate lottery ticket and a level 1 index card. Lung Shiqi immediately called out the system and clicked on the lottery page. The intermediate lottery option lit up. He looked at the introduction of the level 1 index card and figured out how to use it. To put it bluntly, it meant that he could actively add a selection condition during the lottery. The level 1 index card could actively select a type of virtual world. Then the range of the lottery would be locked in this type of virtual world. Lung Shiqi looked at the options that appeared in front of him. There were text world, game world, animation world, movie world, etc. After thinking for a moment, Lung Shiqi decided to choose the game world. What Lung Shiqi needed the most now was naturally something that could increase his strength, and the other types of worlds were not very reliable. For example, although there were many hot-blooded animes in the animation world, there were also many daily animes, so he might not be able to get something that could be used. Only the game world, regardless of whether the game was good or bad. At least the game design was there, and it would definitely increase the player's strength. After making up his mind, Lung Shiqi clicked on the intermediate lottery. After a dazzling light, Lung Shiqi received his prize. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the intermediate prize, Advanced Mount Pill. Lung Shiqi. At this moment, Lung Shiqi only had 3 words in his mind. What are you after? How many days had he wasted and how much effort had he put in just for this mission, and this chance to draw an intermediate prize? In the end, this was all he got. What high-grade mount pill? Where did this mount come from? Even though Lung Shiqi felt that his state of mind was already very high, he still couldn't suppress the anger in his heart. However, despite his anger, Lung Shiqi still put away the advanced mount pill. He wanted to use this high-grade mount pill to constantly remind himself that he couldn't trust this lottery system. He wanted to distance himself from the lottery system and start from himself. After a long while, Lung Shiqi finally calmed down and adjusted his state of mind. In the end, he decided to continue recuperating. While Lung Shiqi was recuperating in seclusion, Bloodmist Island was in an uproar. After the puppet battle in the wetlands, Blood Fog Island was left with a total of 13 forces. However, in just a dozen days, 5 forces had been destroyed. 4 of them were related to the Yushu clan. They were the Twin Heroes clan, the Green Lotus sect, the Flying Sand clan, and the Tuzhuang clan. The last one had been destroyed by the Seiji. Furthermore, until now, the Yushu clan was the only force that occupied 3 districts. The Blood Moon and the Seiji only occupied 2 districts. Gradually, the title of the most powerful force on Blood Fog Island had landed on the Yushu clan's head. Just as everyone thought that the Yushu clan would seize the opportunity to take over Wind Valley, which no longer had any powerful forces, unexpectedly, the Yushu clan actually stopped. Many people couldn't understand, but the leaders of the various forces knew that Yushu had done the right thing. Although the Yushu clan was indeed very powerful and had many people, occupying 3 districts was already their limit. After all, The more districts they occupied, the more people they had to spread out to defend them. Not only did they have to defend against humans, they also had to defend against demonic beasts. Otherwise, no matter how much territory they occupied, if they couldn't defend it, what was the point of having it? However, regardless of the commotion outside, Leng Shiqi didn't pay any attention to it. 3 days later, Leng Shiqi finally recovered from the injuries he had sustained in the Spiritual Ruins Instance dungeon. His next step was to attempt to break through to the 7th level of the Pure Spirit Realm. In every large realm, the 3rd to 4th level and the 6th to 7th level were all huge bottlenecks. Before entering the Spiritual Ruins Instance dungeon, Leng Shiqi's cultivation was already at the peak of the 6th level of the Pure Spirit Realm. However, he had yet to touch the bottleneck of the 7th level at that time. The continuous battles in the Spiritual Ruins Instance dungeon had allowed Leng Shiqi's cultivation to improve further. Now that he had recovered, he could clearly sense that he was about to touch the bottleneck. However, if he were to cultivate at a normal speed, he estimated that he would need at least another month to break through this bottleneck. He couldn't wait that long. Since that was the case, he could only rely on external objects. Thinking of this, Leng Shiqi took out a fist-sized sticky blood ball from the system space. It was the demon blood of the Spiritual Ruins Beast King. Although relying on external objects to cultivate would make his foundation unstable, Leng Shiqi really couldn't wait for a month. He was very clear that his aptitude wasn't the best on Blood Mist Island. Whether it was Yushu, Hengming Delta Origi, or even Shui Wuhai, they all had better aptitudes than him. The reason why his cultivation could keep up with these people was not only because of his own hard work and comprehension, but also because of various opportunities and coincidences. If he really cultivated step by step for more than a month, the others would have already broken through to the 7th level of the Pure Spirit Realm. It was a huge breakthrough from the 6th level to the 7th level of the Pure Spirit Realm. After the 7th level, it was the late stage of the Pure Spirit Realm. Whether it was the depth or the purity of the spiritual energy, it was much higher than the 6th level. Of course, even if the others broke through to the 7th level of the Pure Spirit Realm, he wasn't afraid. The most important thing was that he always had a sense of urgency in his heart. He had a feeling that there would be a huge change on Blood Mist Island soon. Therefore, he had to increase his strength as soon as possible. At most, he could slowly polish his spiritual energy after breaking through to the 7th level. He had done this when he was at the 5th level of the Pure Spirit Realm. Since he had made up his mind, then he would do it. Leng Shiqi first adjusted himself to the best state. He picked up the demonic blood, took a deep breath, and swallowed it. He had refined demonic blood several times, but this was the first time he had refined the demonic blood of a rank 2 demonic beast. Immediately, Leng Shiqi felt an incomparably powerful energy explode in his body. It was as if a bomb was stuffed in his stomach, and it was also filled with a tyrannical aura. Leng Shiqi didn't dare to be negligent. He quickly guided this energy to attack the barrier of the 7th level of the Pure Spirit Realm. Boom, boom, boom. A series of muffled sounds came from his body. The demonic blood's energy violently attacked the bottleneck, and every time, Leng Shiqi felt that his body was going to explode. But he endured it and didn't make a sound. Fortunately, Leng Shiqi had cultivated the body refining technique 8 Stones horizontal training technique, so the strength of his body was far beyond that of ordinary people. Otherwise, he would have already exploded and died. Of course, Leng Shiqi also didn't have a good time. His whole body was red, like a prawn in a steamer. At this time, the spiritual light of the ink-flowing clothes on his body suddenly circulated, and a burst of coolness hit his face. Immediately, it helped Leng Shiqi relieve a lot of pain. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Leng Shiqi seized the time to break through the bottleneck with all his strength. Under the repeated attacks, the bottleneck was finally broken. Chapter 98. When Leng Shiqi heard Feng Feisha shout the word kill, he knew that it was time for him to make a move. He took advantage of the moment when Tu Zhuang's mind was in turmoil, and immediately used the confusion step technique to flash over. Halfway through, he shot out 2 rays of unblocking meridian sword chi to injure Tu Zhuang's legs, and seal his meridians. Then he used the rainbow cauldron sword technique, and the sword pierced towards Tu Zhuang like a rainbow. At the same time, Feng Feisha's heavy staff also smashed down. At this critical moment, Tu Lu hurriedly took out a sparkling jade tablet and crushed it. Following that, a green screen of light suddenly appeared. The green light screen formed a shield in front of Tu Zhuang. Lung Shiqi's sword light and Feng Feisha's heavy staff both hit the green shield. The green shield suddenly twisted rapidly and shattered in less than 2 breaths of time. But Tu Zhuang had already used this opportunity to retreat. At this moment, he stared at Lung Shiqi in shock, and then looked at Feng Feisha with resentment. Tu Zhuang seemed to want to say something, but Feng Feisha was too lazy to talk nonsense and smash with his heavy staff again. Lung Shiqi used the confusion step technique and the rainbow cauldron sword technique to attack. Whether it was cultivation or the realm of spiritual techniques, Lung Shiqi was much higher than Tu Zhuang. Together with Feng Feisha, who was at pure spirit realm level 5, Tu Zhuang was covered in wounds in a moment. But the rest of Tu Zhuang's people were all entangled and no one could come to his aid. What was worse was that his trump card was forced out the moment Lung Shiqi attacked. His legs were also injured and he couldn't run away. At this moment, it could be said that he was at the end of his rope. However, even if he was at the end of his rope, Tu Zhuang never thought of surrendering, because he knew that Feng Feisha would definitely not let him go. Since that was the case, he could only fight to the death. It would be best if he could drag someone down with him. Unfortunately, how could Feng Feisha and Lung Shiqi give him this chance? The two of them immediately moved away in tacit understanding, unwilling to fight Tu Zhuang head-on. As a result, Slaughterer's injuries continued to worsen. In the end, Lung Shiqi managed to find an opening and stabbed him in the chest, causing him to fall to the ground. When Feng Feisha saw that his old rival was no longer breathing, his heart was filled with endless emotions. At the same time, he once again felt the power of Lung Shiqi. During the battle with Slaughterer, Feng Feisha had basically been slacking from the start to the end. He had only been looking for opportunities to sneak attack from the side. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that they were slaughtered by Lung Shiqi. With Tu Lu's death, there was no longer any suspense in the battle. Lung Shiqi and Feng Feisha continued to work together to quickly kill off the other 2 pure spirit realm spirit cultivators of Tu Zhuang. During this time, there were a few spirit assembly spirit cultivators who managed to escape, but they did not chase after them because the situation was already set. Feng Feisha and Lung Shiqi thought the same. After Feng Feisha finished off the last person, he said, "Brother Lung's strength is superb. It was all thanks to Brother Lung's help that we were able to kill Slaughterer." Lung Shiqi shook his head and said indifferently, "We each took what we needed. What does Sect Master Feng plan to do next? While the news hasn't been sent back yet, we will gather all our forces and attack the Tu Zhuang camp." It turned out that what Feng Feisha said to Slaughterer before was all a lie. It was just to make his mind waver. Feng Feisha's eyes were filled with fanaticism and greed. Soon, all the resources of Tu Zhuang would belong to him, and he would also dominate the sand. But at this moment, there was a burst of hurried footsteps in the distance. It was especially obvious when they stepped on the sand. Listening to these footsteps, there were probably no less than 50 to 60 people. Feng Feisha restrained his expression and frowned as he looked into the distance. He really couldn't figure out where so many people came from. Gradually, a large group of people walked over. Upon closer inspection, there were actually 60 people. Feng Feisha saw that these people did not look friendly and his heart sank. And when he saw the person in the lead, his heart skipped a beat. He recognized that the person was Yushu. At this time, Yushu's cultivation was already at the 6th level of pure spirit realm. Then there was no need to think about this group of people. They were definitely from the Yushu clan. But what made him feel even more terrified was that there was a person standing in the crowd behind Yushu. He was covered in a black robe and wearing a dark golden mask. That was Dark Crow. Feng Feisha no longer had the high-spirited appearance from before. His heart was already filled with endless regret. What was the Yushu clan doing here? They must be here to kill Lung Shiqi. But there were also a few doubts in his mind. Yesterday, Lung Shiqi just joined the Flying Sand clan. Today the Yushu clan came. Who leaked the news? In addition, Even if the Yushu clan came, they should go to the Flying Sand clan's camp. Why did they come here directly? He originally thought that after monopolizing the sand and accumulating resources, his strength would increase greatly. At that time, he might not be afraid of the Yushu clan. But now, how could he resist the joint attack of Yushu and the Dark Crow? A series of questions made Feng Feisha's face turn gloomy. Just when he was about to say something, he saw Yushu waving his hand and the 60 people behind him rushed forward. Feng Feisha immediately panicked. There were only a dozen people left on his side. How could he fight? Clan leader Yu, listen to me. Feng Feisha hurriedly shouted. Just when he opened his mouth, he definitely did not expect that Leng Shiqi, who was standing next to him, would suddenly throw out a punch. That punch was incomparably powerful. It was like a fierce tiger coming out of its cage and suddenly attacked. Feng Feisha was caught off guard and was directly hit by the punch. In an instant, cracking sounds could be heard coming from Feng Feisha's body. Who knew how many of his bones were broken? What was even more serious was that a surge of energy had entered his body and was crazily destroying his meridians and internal organs. This was Leng Shiqi's tiger wave stomping fist. Pooh! Feng Feisha vomited blood and fell to the ground. He looked at Leng Shiqi with a face full of disbelief. He opened his mouth, but before he could say anything, Yushu had already arrived and immediately slashed out with his sword. At the same time, Leng Shiqi also stabbed with his sword. Feng Feisha died just like that. If Tulu died with hatred, then Feng Feisha died with hatred. At the moment before he died, he finally understood that Leng Shiqi had already joined forces with the Yushu clan to seize the entire sand. It was a pity that he and Tulu were still negotiating for peace. It was laughable that he thought that his plan was flawless and that he could monopolize the sand. Pitiful and laughable. In the end, he was just a chess piece in someone else's hands. Leng Shiqi looked at Feng Feisha's eyes that gradually lost their luster. As if seeing through his thoughts, he secretly thought, "Not only you, all of us are chess pieces." What happened next was a completely unequal battle. In less than half an incense's time, the 2 pure spirit realm cultivators of the Flying Sand sect died. The remaining dozen or so spirit gathering realm cultivators either died or surrendered. And from the beginning to the end, that Dark Crow did not make a move. In fact, he was disguised by Mu-21. Before Leng Shiqi left, he left the mask behind to make Feng Feisha despair and reveal a flaw. Yushu walked over and whispered, "It's all settled. Where do we go next?" Now that the leaders of Tuzhuang and Flying Sand sect had died here, and half of the pure spirit realm cultivators had died, the remaining people were nothing to worry about. It could be said that the camps of Tuzhuang and Flying Sand sect were like cooked ducks, allowing them to choose. Leng Shiqi thought for a moment and said, "A few people from Tuzhuang escaped just now. The news might have been leaked out, and they might have directly escaped from the sand. It might be too late to rush over now. Let's go to Flying Sand sect." "All right, brothers, let's go to Flying Sand sect's camp," Yushu shouted and quickly left with his men. Chapter 99. Leng Shiqi finally broke through the barrier with the help of the demonic blood. A muffled sound came from his body, and then the aura of his whole body suddenly increased by a large margin. A gust of wind blew a few feet around his body. 7th level of the pure spirit realm. The moment Leng Shiqi broke through to the 7th level of the pure spirit realm, the sea of qi in his body began to expand, and it only stopped when it had nearly doubled in size. The expansion of the sea of qi was like a river flowing into the sea, absorbing the remaining power of the demonic blood. Leng Shiqi's complexion also returned to normal, but his heart was very calm, without sadness or joy, and he did not stand up. Then he took out the spiritual ruin Beast King's demonic core from the system space. Leng Shiqi was preparing to fuse the Beast Origin battle pattern. The Beast Origin battle pattern was a special spirit technique attached to the cultivation method Demonic Beast Origin technique. The Demonic Beast Origin technique had 3 levels: refining demonic blood, swallowing demonic core, and devouring demonic soul. Previously, Leng Shiqi was unable to cultivate the Demonic Beast Origin technique to the 2nd level, because he did not have a demonic core. Fortunately, he killed the spiritual ruin beast king and obtained a demonic core. He was now at the 7th level of the pure spirit realm. Not only could he cultivate to the 2nd level of the demonic beast origin technique, but he could also fuse the unique beast origin battle pattern of the 2nd level. This beast origin battle pattern was a kind of spirit technique that was attached to the body. After successfully cultivating it, demonic beast patterns would appear on the body, which had different amplification effects on the cultivator. It could also greatly increase the strength of the body. As for what kind of amplification it was, it depended on what kind of demonic core was fused. For example, demonic beasts like the blood-spotted leopard increased speed. If it was a black-haired bear, it increased defense. Lung Shiqi guessed that the spiritual ruin beast king's amplification should be strength. The first level of refining demonic blood could quickly increase cultivation. The 2nd level of swallowing demonic core could strengthen the body. And as for the 3rd level of devouring demonic soul, because the cultivation method was incomplete, he did not know what effect it had. Then, Lung Shiqi quickly went through the chant of fusing the beast origin battle pattern in his heart several times, and resolutely swallowed the demonic core of the spiritual ruin beast king. Refining monster cores was different from refining monster blood. After the demonic blood entered his mouth, it transformed into violent spiritual energy. However, the demonic core instantly dispersed into countless specks of light that merged into his muscles, bones, and blood vessels. However, this process was still extremely violent. Those dots of light did not gently merge into the muscles, bones, and blood vessels. Instead, they violently destroyed the original meridians and bones, and then reconstructed them. This process was undoubtedly extremely painful. Even with Lung Shiqi's astonishing willpower, he still let out a series of screams. His face was already covered in sweat. Fortunately, the flowing ink robe worked again, alleviating his pain a little and allowing him to maintain the beast energy battle pattern. But gradually, all the bones and meridians in his body seemed to be violently destroyed and reconstructed. Even with the help of the flowing ink robe, he could not hold on any longer. Just as Lung Shiqi's meridians were about to be destroyed and he was about to die, spots of golden light suddenly appeared in his body. As soon as those light spots appeared, the power of the monster core instantly became obedient. Even the Lung Shiqi could control it at will. Those golden light spots even merged into Lung Shiqi's bones and meridians in the end. Lung Shiqi remembered that these golden light spots were the golden rain formed when the golden light shield shattered after he obtained the rank 4 pill. At that time, when the golden rain entered his body, Lung Shiqi specially studied it for a while, but he could not find any traces of the light spots in his body. He did not expect that at this moment, those light spots would actually take the initiative to come out and help him suppress the power of the monster core. Although he did not know the reason, it was a good thing. Lung Shiqi immediately focused on condensing the beast energy battle pattern. At this time, a strange pattern was slowly outlined on Lung Shiqi's back. As time passed, the pattern became more and more complete. After about an hour, it formed the appearance of a ferocious beast. Looking closely, it was the appearance of the spiritual ruin beast king. The slightly different thing was that there were a few golden lines on the pattern of the spiritual ruin beast king. Roar! Finally, when the pattern was completely formed, Lung Shiqi suddenly let out a beast-like roar. Then his bones and muscles rapidly grew. In the blink of an eye, Lung Shiqi's body suddenly became tall and strong. He was almost as tall as an adult. Not only that, but his entire body also bulged with fierce muscles. Fortunately, Lung Shiqi's flowing ink clothes were not ordinary. They were extremely tough and did not burst because of this. However, Lung Shiqi now looked like he was wearing a tight suit that was a few sizes too small. It looked a little funny. However, Lung Shiqi could feel that there was a huge amount of power in his body. Even his eyes were covered with a faint layer of bloody light. His heart was filled with irritation and fury. Now he only wanted to destroy everything that he saw. He stomped his right foot and directly jumped out of a hole in the ground. In the next moment, he rushed to the mountain wall and punched. Boom! Lung Shiqi's fist instantly blasted an inch-deep hole in the mountain wall. Boom boom boom. Lung Shiqi's fist constantly smashed into the mountain wall, blasting out one hole after another. Even the top of the cave was scattered with scattered rocks. Gradually, the bloody light in Lung Shiqi's eyes disappeared. He immediately realized what he was doing, and immediately formed a spiritual seal. Once the spiritual seal was formed, the spiritual ruin beast king pattern on Lung Shiqi's back dimmed. His body began to gradually shrink and return to its normal size. At the same time, the power in his body also receded like the tide. At this moment, Lung Shiqi suddenly felt a slight sense of fatigue. Looking at the devastated mountain wall that he had destroyed, his eyes flashed with various emotions. Although the beast origin battle pattern was successfully smelted, the spiritual ruin beast king's pattern was too violent. At present, Lung Shiqi could not completely control it. He would even be controlled by the power and temporarily lose his consciousness. In addition, maintaining this state would also squeeze out his physical strength and body at all times. He only maintained it for a short while and felt a little tired. However, its power was indeed very fierce. Lung Shiqi did not use much spiritual power when he punched just now, but relied on the power of his body. If he added spiritual power and spiritual skills on top of this, how strong would he be? Overall, Lung Shiqi was still very satisfied with the beast origin battle pattern, but he could not use it easily and could only treat it as a trump card. Consecutively breaking through the 7th level of the pure spirit realm and refining the beast origin battle pattern had greatly enhanced Lung Shiqi's cultivation and physical strength. It also gave him greater confidence to survive. In the following time, Lung Shiqi continued to sit cross-legged and began to consolidate the 7th level of the pure spirit realm. Unexpectedly, a day later, Ziyu flew back and brought him news of Yushu. Blood Mist Island has changed. The monster beast is rampaging. Return quickly. Chapter 100. Thank you very much for the tips and monthly votes of my book friend, not by Xiaojun. Seeing this message, Lung Shiqi thought that the thing he was worried about had happened. Looking down, according to the message, all the monsters on Blood Fog Island suddenly went berserk yesterday. Originally, there were some demonic beasts in each area, but those demonic beasts were wandering aimlessly. As long as one stayed far away from them, nothing would happen. Only when fighting for resources would they occasionally fight with monsters. And now, with the increase of everyone's strength, rank 1 monsters were no longer unstoppable. But since yesterday, those wandering monsters suddenly went crazy, looking for humans to attack. They even rushed into the camp. At that time, Yushu was still in the desert camp, and suddenly 3 monsters ran over. Fortunately, there were many people in the desert. Under Yushu's command, they killed the monsters, but more than 10 people were injured. The camp in the withered forest was also attacked by monsters. Fortunately, this camp was run by the Yushu clan for the longest time, and they also set up some traps. There were also 4 pure spirit realm cultivators in the camp, and they barely repelled the monsters. But the camp in the fog area suffered heavy losses. Because Yushu knew that the fog area and the Blood Moon's forces bordered, the 2 sides were now in an alliance and would not attack each other. Therefore, the camp in the fog area had the least manpower, and only 1 pure spirit realm cultivator was in charge. After being attacked by the monsters, only a few people escaped, and the rest were all dead. Now, Yushu meant that he would guard the desert and let Lung Shiqi take charge of the camp in the withered forest. As for the fog area, they could only give up. But Lung Shiqi did not think so. He felt that it was necessary to go to the fog area. First, it was to eliminate the monsters, and second, it was for another purpose. Immediately, Lung Shiqi passed the message to Yushu and went straight to the fog area. When he arrived at the misty camp, he saw 3 demonic beasts entrenched there. When the beasts saw the Lung Shiqi, their eyes suddenly glowed with blood-red light, and they rushed straight over. Lung Shiqi's expression did not change, and a saber appeared in his hand. The first demon beast pounced over. Lung Shiqi moved his feet slightly to the side to avoid it, and then he slashed out a magnificent crescent moon blade aura. The saber flashed, and the demonic beast was beheaded, beheading a rank 1 demonic beast with a single slash. With Lung Shiqi's current cultivation at the 7th level of the pure spirit realm, Coupled with the might of the waning moon's swift slash and the strength of his physical body, ordinary rank 1 demonic beasts were no longer a threat to him. The other 2 demonic beasts followed closely. Lung Shiqi put away his saber and picked up his sword. His body moved and turned into several shadows, passing through the middle of the 2 demonic beasts with sharp sword light and invisible sword chi. Puff, 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 puff. Several terrifying wounds appeared on the 2 demonic beasts in an instant, and sword chi rushed into their bodies to destroy their flesh and blood, but they did not die for a while. Lung Shiqi put away his sword again, and made a gesture with both hands, and several blood columns spurted out from the wounds of the demonic beasts. The demonic beasts let out a frightened and powerless roar, and their blood was gradually drained and they died. After a while, Lung Shiqi gathered 3 blood balls in his hand. He put away the blood balls and sold the corpses of the demonic beasts to the system. Everything was so neat and skillful. The 3 rank 1 demonic beasts that could destroy a small camp were like 3 toys in the hands of Lung Shiqi, and they were casually disposed of. Then Lung Shiqi looked around, found the direction in his memory, and left here. Soon after, he found the place where he hid to recover his spiritual power after killing the ape-shaped demonic beasts. That is, the place where he accidentally found the underground space. Coming here again, Lung Shiqi couldn't help but sigh a little. The last time he was here, his cultivation was still at the 2nd level of the pure spirit realm. And in order to kill a rank 1 demonic beast, he used all his skills. Moreover, he was forced by the Yushu clan and the Beilichuan at that time. But now his cultivation was already at the 7th level of the pure spirit realm, and he was able to casually kill a rank 1 demon beast. The 100-kilometer regiment had already become history, and the Jade Tree Gang had become something in his hands. Now he even secretly controlled an entire 3 large areas. In just the past 2 or 3 months, both his strength and influence had undergone tremendous changes. But now was not the time to sigh. The sudden outbreak of the demonic beasts was definitely not accidental, and he even felt that this was just the beginning. In the face of unknown changes, this was the only place that could give him an answer. With a thought, Lung Shiqi's entire body gradually sank into the ground. After entering the ground, Lung Shiqi immediately raised his vigilance because he knew that there were restrictions around this place, but they were not activated. When Lung Shiqi sank to the lowest point, he was not in a hurry. Instead, he poked 2 small holes and carefully observed the situation inside. This underground space was no different from the last time Lung Shiqi came here. After observing for a long time, he resolutely descended, but when he landed on the ground of the underground space, he directly drilled in. Then he stopped moving. This time, he did not break into the passages out of curiosity. Last time he escaped because of luck. If he was discovered again, he might really die here. Now what he had to do was wait. The place he was at was the intersection of several passages. He believed that someone would definitely pass by here, and maybe he could hear some useful information. He waited for a full 2 days. Lung Shiqi was also very calm. After all, he had a lot of food and water in the system space, so he could wait slowly. Finally, at this time, he heard light footsteps and the sound of conversation coming from above. Sigh, the formation can't hold on anymore. What should we do? Hee, what else can we do? We just have to shrink the secret realm. In that case, all the things we've worked so hard to set up will be destroyed. It's better if it's destroyed. Then we won't need so many people, and we can retire. Retire? Do you think the Blood Garment Pavilion went through so much trouble to keep you alive so that you can retire? What do you mean? What do I mean? Don't you understand? Why don't you think of a way to contribute before the secret realm shrinks? Only with meritorious service can you survive. Look at Zhualaogui, he's really a sly old fox. When he knew that the formation could not hold on any longer, he directly offered his years of research to make the demon beast go berserk. He won the favor of the higher-ups. Zhualaogui does have some skills. That's why we have to find a way to contribute in this month. I just happen to have an idea here, and I need Brother Lin's help. Don't worry, after it's done, we'll split the credit equally. Oh, Brother Zhuang, what idea do you have? I'm all ears. Ha ha ha, Brother Lin, listen carefully. Their voices gradually drifted away, and the rest could not be heard. But that was enough. Leng Shiqi obtained a few important pieces of information from their conversation. The demon beast going berserk on Blood Mist Island was related to Zhualaogui. Leng Shiqi remembered that Zhualaogui specialized in studying demon beasts. Later, he also guessed that the demonic beast technique was created by Zhualaogui. As someone who cultivated the demonic beast technique, he naturally knew how profound and strange this technique was. It could be said that it completely defeated the Moonlight Cloud Codex, which was also a third-stage technique. The reason Zhualaogui could make the demon beast go berserk was because the formation was unstable, and the result of the formation's instability was to shrink the size of Blood Mist Island. In other words, the heavens collapsing calamity might happen again. The time was within a month. Chapter 101. Within a month, the heavenly collapse will happen again. This news caused Leng Shiqi's hair to stand on end. If the heavenly collapse happens again, the entire inner area will disappear, leaving only the small mountain behind. Currently, all the factions would only venture up the mountain when they were collecting food and water. This was because there were many rank 1 monsters on the mountain, and they appeared very frequently. There were even people who had seen rank 2 monsters appear. That small mountain was very dangerous. Leng Shiqi was also very glad that he had made this trip. Otherwise, he would have disappeared from the world in a month. In the face of the heavenly collapse, what was the use of being strong? At that time, only those who were close to the mountain would be able to survive. Facing such a situation, Leng Shiqi's joy from the increase in his strength was completely extinguished. Then Leng Shiqi continued to stay underground for a while. After confirming that there was no movement, he quickly returned to the surface of the foggy area. After returning to the surface, he first took a few deep breaths. Then his eyes flashed and countless different thoughts flashed through his mind. He had to move the Yushu clan to the mountain within a month, no, within half a month. Moreover, he could not waste the 3 areas he occupied. It was best to maximize the benefits. After thinking for a while, Leng Shiqi put on his mask and returned to the camp in the withered forest. When Leng Shiqi arrived at the camp as a dark crow, he discovered that there were quite a few injured people in the camp. It seemed that the demonic beast rampage a few days ago had caused quite a lot of damage. When the gang members saw Leng Shiqi return, they all looked at him with respect. Although he rarely appeared in the gang, everyone knew of his strength. This was the respect they had for the strong. What surprised Leng Shiqi was that Yushu was not here. After finding Blood is no different, he found out that Yushu was still overseeing the camp in the desert. He had gathered all the wounded people here, and placed most of his forces here. According to Yushu, he alone was enough to deal with a monster. There was no need to place too much of his forces in the desert. The camp in the withered forest was left to Hua Lingling, and Blood is no different to take care of. Hua Lingling had followed Yushu for a long time, and was very familiar with the gang's affairs. Blood is no different was originally in charge of the Beilichuan. Therefore, the two of them took care of the camp in an orderly manner. This made Leng Shiqi, the vice-gang leader, feel a little embarrassed. Therefore Leng Shiqi asked, "Is there any monster roaming in the withered forest?" Hua Lingling and Blood is no different were slightly surprised. Blood is no different replied, "There should be 1 or 2. They were repelled by us before. Maybe they're hiding somewhere to heal their wounds." That's right. It seems that there are still monsters coming down from the mountain. Yesterday, one appeared at the entrance of the camp. It wandered around for a while, and then left. Hua Lingling added. Leng Shiqi nodded and said, "Send a few fast brothers to scout out the monster's location." "A vice-gang leader, what do you want to do?" Hua Lingling asked, puzzled. Blood is no difference expression changed slightly. He seemed to have thought of something and hurriedly said, "I'll do it right away." "Go. I have an urgent matter to discuss with the gang leader. Before that, let's get rid of these hidden dangers," Leng Shiqi said calmly. Hua Lingling swallowed her saliva. She thought for a moment before understanding the meaning of "get rid of these hidden dangers." Then she followed Blood is no different in a daze. Leng Shiqi looked at the departing Hua Lingling with amusement. He felt that it was not bad to have a little girl like her by his side. After about 4 hours, the people that Shui sent out not only found traces of the demonic beast, but also directly brought the demonic beast back. Or rather, they were chased all the way here by the monster. A thin young man ran towards them shouting, save me, because there was a monster right behind him. The people in the camp heard the cry for help from afar. They immediately picked up their weapons and rushed out of the camp in an orderly manner. However, there was a figure that was faster than them. Lung Shiqi stepped on the black fog and directly overtook the crowd to rush forward. Just as the monster raised its claws and smashed towards the youth, Lung Shiqi arrived. Xing. Lung Shiqi unsheathed his saber and slashed out a dazzling saber aura. The saber aura flashed and the monster's claws were directly cut off. The monster fell to the ground with a bang. Lung Shiqi immediately pulled back his saber and punched out. Both of his fists fiercely smashed into the monster's body. The monster's huge body was actually sent flying by the two fists. It rolled a few times on the ground. Lung Shiqi followed closely and chopped off its huge head. 2 slashes and 2 punches killed a rank 1 monster. The people who were still running over suddenly stopped in their tracks. It was as if time had suddenly stopped. The scene looked a little strange. Lung Shiqi pulled back his saber and clapped his hands. He softly said, "Get rid of it, it smells bad." After saying this, he walked straight into the camp. Everyone was already stunned, but they still subconsciously opened up a small path for him. After Lung Shiqi returned to the tent for a while, everyone finally came back to their senses. Their first reaction was not shock, but surprise. They all knew that this vice leader's strength was extraordinary, but they never thought that he was strong enough to easily kill a monster. With such a strong person, they suddenly felt a strong sense of security. The panic of being attacked by monsters in the past few days was blown away. Soon after, another 3 demonic beasts were lured over. Lung Shiqi easily dealt with them in a few moves. At first, everyone was surprised, but in the end, they were a little numb. 3 slashes to kill a monster? Oh, that's it. Lung Shiqi used a cloth to wipe the blood on his clothes and asked Hua Lingling, and blood is no different. Blood is no different replied. Including the 2 that were repelled and the 2 that came from the mountain. You should have killed all of them. Hua Lingling nodded. That's good. I can leave without worry. Lung Shiqi said calmly. What? Sir, you're leaving? The 2 were a little surprised. Although Lung Shiqi had only been here for less than a day, he gave them a great sense of security and trust. Now that he suddenly said he was leaving, they were a little at a loss. Lung Shiqi finished wiping his saber and said, I have something to discuss with the leader. I will be back soon. Sir, be careful, the 2 said in unison. After that, Lung Shiqi nodded and left, heading straight for the camp in the desert. There were not many people in the desert camp, only about 30 to 40 people. There were also a few unfamiliar faces. However, looking at these people's calm expressions, he knew that the situation here was not bad. When Lung Shiqi arrived, he immediately found Yushu and asked, Is there any power in Wind Valley? Yushu opened his mouth. He did not know why he suddenly asked about the situation in Wind Valley, but he still answered. There is no power in Wind Valley at the moment. However, there is a loose alliance formed by some escaped spirit cultivators. They gathered together to fight against the monsters. Lung Shiqi's eyes flashed and he explained a few things to Yushu. A few complicated expressions appeared on Yushu's face. There was doubt, worry, shock, and finally madness. Chapter 102. Not long after, Blood Moon's camp welcomed another uninvited guest. When Lung Shiqi appeared in Delta Origi's tent, Delta Origi did not feel surprised at all. She was even a little used to it. However, when they subconsciously probed the other party's cultivation, they all exclaimed, 7th level of the pure spirit realm? That's right, Delta Origi's cultivation had also reached the 7th level of the pure spirit realm. In fact, Lung Shiqi still had some thoughts in his mind before he came. In his memory, ever since Delta Origi obtained the first cultivation method, her cultivation had risen at a terrifying speed. and Lung Shiqi's cultivation had always been lower than Delta Origi's. Even after Delta Origi broke through to the pure spirit realm, he had just reached the 8th level of the spirit gathering realm, and the gap between the two was getting bigger and bigger. Before entering the dungeon, Lung Shiqi finally caught up with Delta Origi's footsteps at the 6th level of the pure spirit realm. A day ago, when Lung Shiqi forcibly broke through to the 7th level of the pure spirit realm by refining the spiritual ruin Beast King's demon blood, he felt that he had finally surpassed Delta Origi. But he never thought that Delta Origi would also cultivate to the 7th level of the pure spirit realm. Similarly, Lung Shiqi also brought Delta Origi a lot of surprise, but just as the two were staring at each other, a figure appeared outside the tent and asked softly, "Moon Master, what's the matter?" Delta Origi restrained her surprised expression and said coldly, "Nothing, you can leave." "Yes." Lung Shiqi asked softly, "When did you break through?" "Just these 2 days," Delta Origi said, her eyes staring at Lung Shiqi as if they could speak. Lung Shiqi could only say, "What a coincidence, I also broke through in these 2 days." "You didn't come here to show off, did you?" "Ahem, of course not. I have something urgent to talk to you about." Lung Shiqi's face darkened, and his tone became more serious. Seeing this, the Delta Origi said seriously, "Let's hear it. Let me ask you first. How are the demonic beasts on your side?" "With me around, they won't be able to do anything," the Delta Origi said calmly with a hint of arrogance in her tone. Lung Shiqi narrowed his eyes and said in a deep voice, "That's good. Let's talk about a deal. I have an extremely important piece of information that I can share with you. This information is even related to your life." Delta Origi's expression changed, as if judging the authenticity of Lung Shiqi's words. Then she said, "What do you want?" "I want your spirit technique that can hide your cultivation." Lung Shiqi raised his eyebrows slightly and said what he wanted. Lung Shiqi also felt that his cultivation at the 7th level of the pure spirit realm was indeed a bit eye-catching. These 2 days, he had been deliberately suppressing the strength of his strength. Fortunately, he had made his moves in front of the Yushu clan. Those spirit-gathering realm spirit cultivators couldn't sense how strong he was, and Yushu, Hualingling, and Blood is no different wouldn't brazenly sense his cultivation. Therefore at present, other than the Delta Origi, no one knew his true cultivation. Therefore he turned his attention to the Delta Origi. If he could hide his cultivation, sometimes it could have a miraculous effect. Delta Origi revealed a playful expression and said, "So that's your idea. Actually, my breath-restraining technique isn't a spirit technique. To be precise, it's a secret technique. It only changes the way the spirit energy flows. It's not that brilliant." "It doesn't need to be brilliant, as long as it's practical," Lung Shiqi said indifferently. "This secret technique isn't that precious. If your information is valuable enough, you can take it at any time. So you've agreed. You can tell me your information." A few days later, the sudden riot of the demonic beasts caught all the spirit cultivators of the Blood Mist Island unprepared. Everyone was in a state of panic. However, the Yushu clan was one of the exceptions. What was strange was that at this time, all the members of the Yushu clan were gathered in the desert camp. Yushu passed down one order after another, and the few pure spirit realm spirit cultivators under him also carried out their duties. The entire camp was operating quickly in an orderly manner. Tomorrow was the time for resources to erupt, and it was also the time for them to take action. Lung Shiqi asked Yushu who was beside him. "Everything has been arranged, right?" "Don't worry, I've already given the orders. Everyone knows what they have to do. Mu 21 and the others have also gone up the mountain to find a suitable place. They should be back soon." Yushu spoke seriously at this time. He had always been at ease with Yushu's arrangements, so he didn't ask too much. "And let everyone rest well today. Tomorrow will be very tiring." "Understood." The next morning, all the members of the Yushu clan, more than 100 people, stood in an orderly manner. They didn't bring any food or water with them, and all of them went into battle lightly. Everyone's face was filled with killing intent. Yushu stood at the front, and behind him was a row of pure spirit realm spirit cultivators, including Lung Shiqi. After a careful count, there were as many as 13 people. Ever since the puppet battle at the wetland, the Yushu clan had not been stingy with the distribution of cultivation resources. In addition to the recent few battles, there were several people who had broken through to the pure spirit realm. Yushu rubbed his hands and whispered to Leng Shiqi, "Why am I still a little nervous?" "Since that's the case, then don't go," Leng Shiqi replied snappily. "Hee, I'm just kidding, I'm just kidding." Yushu then shouted loudly, "Brothers, let's go." With Yushu's order, more than 100 people immediately took action and rushed towards Wind Valley. There was only a group of scattered desperados in Wind Valley, and most of them were from forces that had already been destroyed. In order to fight against the rampaging demonic beasts, they had no choice but to form a temporary alliance. But today, when the cultivation resources were erupting, they began to argue with each other. Just as they were arguing and spitting everywhere, they heard orderly footsteps coming from afar. They turned around and saw more than 100 people from the Yushu clan charging towards them aggressively. How could this motley crew have any thoughts of resisting? They immediately scattered like monkeys on a fallen tree, each one running faster than the other. However, the Yushu clan did not chase after them. Instead, they directly barged in to plunder the resources. Unfortunately, there were not many precious resources here, so their harvest was limited. Coincidentally, a loud noise came from the sky and dozens of resources of various colors erupted. Leng Shiqi and Yushu looked at each other. They each led half of their men and moved separately, beginning to quickly plunder all the resources that had fallen into Wind Valley. In order to be quick, they only plundered the resources and did not kill anyone. Of course, if someone acted recklessly, they could not blame anyone else. Soon Leng Shiqi and Yushu met again. They then charged towards the next area, the depression. In the depression, there was a force called the Peak to Society that occupied this area. They were not weak at all. After the resources erupted, the members of the Peak to Society split up to search for resources. At this moment, the Yushu clan suddenly charged in like a ferocious dragon crossing the river, directly attacking the Peak to Society's camp. The Peak to Society's president, Bai Langtao, was also at the 5th level of the pure spirit realm. He was not weak at all, but he was no match for Leng Shiqi and Yushu. The two of them immediately joined forces and charged in, killing Bai Langtao in just a dozen moves. Without a leader, the others instantly panicked and fled as far as they could. The Yushu clan did not chase after them either. They only cared about plundering the resources wantonly and finally swaggered off. Then, the entire Yushu clan turned back like a swarm of locusts and plundered the resources that had fallen on the sand, the withered forest, and the misty area. In the end, they all gathered at the withered forest's camp. Chapter 103. On this day, the Yushu clan plundered the resources of 5 regions like a madman, shocking and infuriating the other factions. They were shocked that the Yushu clan had such a crazy decision and terrifying strength. They were infuriated because they were powerless. Especially the people of the Peak to Society. Their president had been killed by Leng Shiqi and Yushu, who had snatched the resources that they had collected for a long time. Furthermore, they had run away after snatching the resources, while they could only watch helplessly. The Yushu clan's hooligan-like actions filled them with righteous indignation, and they even shouted that they would join forces with the other factions to destroy the Yushu clan. However, no one was willing to provoke such a powerful and shameless person. Just as the various factions were considering how to guard against the Yushu clan's shameless actions, an even more shocking piece of news arrived. The Yushu clan had actually openly sent people to build a camp in the mountains. Their first reaction when they received the news was that the Yushu clan had not gone mad, but had truly lost their minds. The demonic beasts on the Blood Mist Island had already gone berserk, and it was already very good for everyone to be able to protect their own land. The mountains were also viewed as forbidden grounds, and no one dared to go up the mountains to collect food and water. However, the Yushu clan actually dared to openly build a camp in the mountains? Crazy. Just as everyone thought that the Yushu clan had gone mad, the Blood Moon also made a big move, and what they did was exactly the same as the Yushu clan. First, they plundered the resources of the nearby regions. then went up the mountains to build a camp. If the Yushu clan had gone mad, then did they also go mad? This could not be a coincidence. The various factions had a vague feeling that there was something fishy going on, especially Hungming. He knew that Yushu and the Delta Origi were people who would not do anything without benefits. There had to be a special reason for the two of them to do such a seemingly crazy thing at the same time. Meng Ming sat alone and did not say anything. He closed his eyes and pondered. After a long while he suddenly opened his eyes and murmured, "This is a signal." Thus, Meng Ming summoned all the pure spirit realm spirit cultivators under him, and gave out one shocking order after another. At this moment, everyone was guessing the intentions of the Yushu clan and Blood Moon. The entire Blood Mist Island seemed to have become even more tense. At this time, Lung Shiqi was wearing a black gold mask and sitting on a wooden stool. There were 30 to 40 people around him who were busy clearing the area and setting up camp. With Lung Shiqi personally overseeing this place, there naturally wouldn't be any problems. If there were any problems, they would have already been solved. At the same time, on the other side of the hill, another group of people was doing the same thing. They were Blood Moon's people. Not long after, the Delta Origi arrived. When the two of them were far away, Delta Origi said directly, "Why did you make a move so early? If other factions noticed, they might also come up the mountain." When Lung Shiqi told the Delta Origi that the sky would fall again, the Delta Origi was also extremely shocked. The scene of the first sky fall was still vivid in their minds. At that time, they were lucky that they were in the inner region, otherwise they might not have survived. She didn't doubt the authenticity of Lung Shiqi's news because Lung Shiqi wouldn't and didn't need to lie to her. At the same time, the Delta Origi also knew about Lung Shiqi's follow-up plan. However, she thought that Lung Shiqi would wait for a while before making a move. It would be best if they could snatch a large amount of resources before the sky falls, and then let the majority of the people die. Then they could basically monopolize all the resources on the Blood Mist Island. However, she didn't expect that Lung Shiqi would make a move so early. He even went up the mountain to build a camp, as if he was afraid that others wouldn't know. Lung Shiqi replied, "No one knows when the sky will fall again. We can't delay. Moreover, it takes time to build a camp and move resources. These things can be done in 2 or 3 days." The Delta Origi wasn't satisfied with Lung Shiqi's explanation. Lung Shiqi glanced at the Delta Origi and said, "Then you want everyone else to die in the sky fall? Isn't that good?" The Delta Origi's words were full of coldness. "It's very good. This way, we can reduce the number of competitors by more than half. But have you ever thought about what happened after the first heavenly collapse calamity? Corrosive rain fell from the sky and rank 1 monsters frequently appeared. Then after the second skyfall, do you think the Blood Mist Island will also have some unexpected changes?" The Delta Origi frowned and didn't say anything. Seeing this, Lung Shiqi continued, "After this skyfall, we don't know what kind of terrifying dangers will appear. There might even be rank 2 monsters. This small mountain isn't too big, but it's not small either. It can easily accommodate a few hundred people. Isn't it good to have so many people to help us share the unknown dangers?" The Delta Origi paused for a while before saying, "Your vision is further than mine, and your heart is more ruthless than mine." After saying this, the Delta Origi turned and left. Lung Shiqi shook his head slightly and returned to the Yushu clan's group. In the following days, the construction of the camp went smoothly. Moreover, a large amount of resources were moved here. It could be said that the Yushu clan completely abandoned the 3 areas they had already occupied, and moved to occupy an excellent place on the mountain. However, the Blood Mist Island wasn't peaceful these days. First, the Seiji imitated the Yushu clan and Blood Moon's methods. They swept the surrounding areas and went up the mountain. When the other factions saw that the Yushu clan, Blood Moon, and Seiji, the 3 strongest factions, gave up their territory and chose to go up the mountain, they were all a little panicked. They felt that something terrifying was going to happen in the inner area. However, they didn't dare to move their individual strength to the mountain. Thus, they joined forces and formed 2 alliances to force their way up the mountain. By now, 80% of the people on Blood Fog Island had gathered on the small mountain. Only a few people in the inner circle who were greedy for the next eruption of resources were still there. They even laughed at the people on the mountain for throwing away so many resources for nothing. 4 days later, they indeed waited for the eruption of resources. They could pick up all the resources as they wished. They were all incomparably excited. However, just as they were getting excited, the huge blood-colored light barrier covering the Blood Mist Island suddenly twisted. The blood-colored light barrier kept twisting, and the area it covered was gradually shrinking. At the same time, the entire inner area trembled as if an earth dragon had flipped over. Countless huge cracks suddenly appeared. The people in the inner area didn't even have time to scream or call for help before they fell into a bottomless abyss. As for the people near the light barrier, they were directly sucked into the terrifying spatial fragments and turned into dust. The only area that wasn't affected was the small mountain. At this moment, the people who were already on the mountain had a look of horror on their faces. All of their faces were pale, and some of their legs were even trembling. In the midst of the collapse of heaven and earth, they were as weak as ants. Chapter 104. Everyone on the mountain was terrified, but at the same time, they were glad that they had made the right choice. They didn't lust after that little bit of cultivation resources, and because of this, they were able to preserve their precious lives. This time, the heavens collapse didn't last as long as the previous time. When everything returned to normal, only this small mountain was left on the Blood Fog Island. Perhaps the Blood Fog Island couldn't be called an island anymore. However, because the area had been greatly reduced, the fog on this small mountain had also become thicker. At a glance, one could only see about 300 to 400 feet away, and there were many trees blocking their vision. The fog had become thicker, and at the same time, the spiritual chi had become denser. The spiritual chi on the small mountain was now 3 times denser than before. As the spiritual chi became denser, their cultivation speed naturally increased, and a few people even broke through to the pure spirit realm on the spot. At this time, some people also thought about why the Wushu clan and Blood Moon had reacted in advance and moved to the mountain. There was only one reason, and that was that they had already known that the heavens collapse would happen again. However, if it were them, they definitely wouldn't do things so openly. Wasn't this the same as telling others that there would be a change in the inner region? The higher-ups of the various factions couldn't understand even if they racked their brains. At this time in the Wushu clan's camp, the atmosphere was very lively. In fact, the Wushu clan didn't know that the heavens collapse would happen again, and everyone was just following orders. Although they all had doubts in their hearts, they all obediently kept their mouths shut and did what they were supposed to do. Not long ago, when the heavens collapse happened again, they finally understood that it was their clan master and deputy clan master who had saved them all. At this moment, whether it was the old people of the Wushu clan or the people who had surrendered from various factions, they all had endless respect for Wushu and Lung Shiqi. They also had a strong sense of belonging and security to the Wushu clan. In the largest tent of the Wushu clan, Wushu sat at the front, Lung Shiqi sat beside him, and 14 people stood in front of him. These 14 people were all spirit cultivators of the pure spirit realm. Wushu, on the other hand, was in high spirits. His spittle was flying everywhere as he said something along the lines of, "Follow me and you'll get to eat meat." Everyone else was looking at him with excitement. Lung Shiqi was the only one who had his arms crossed and was about to fall asleep. After a long while, Wushu's voice was almost hoarse from all the talking before the crowd dispersed. "Brother Dark Crow, what do you think of what I said? Do you feel like your whole body is filled with hot blood?" Wushu came over and asked excitedly. Lung Shiqi nodded politely. Seeing that Lung Shiqi didn't seem to be in high spirits, Wushu restrained his expression and asked seriously, "What do we do next?" "Wait." Lung Shiqi only said one word. "Wait. Do you think there will be any danger?" Wushu's expression froze. "That's right, I have a feeling that something will happen. Let everyone be alert and don't let their guard down. Don't worry, I will give the order. Also roar." However, before Wushu could finish his sentence, An earth-shattering roar suddenly came from an unknown place. Immediately after, dozens of roars rose and fell, forming waves of sound in the small mountain. Some people with low cultivation even held their ears in pain. Leng Shiqi and Yushu's expressions changed, and they quickly rushed out of the tent. At this time, the people outside were all nervous. When they saw Leng Shiqi and Yushu come out, their expressions became better as if they had found their backbone. Yushu said in a deep voice, "It's demon beasts. So many demon beasts." Leng Shiqi's eyes focused and he channeled his spirit power into his eyes to look in a direction halfway up the mountain. However, the mist was too thick and he couldn't see anything clearly. That direction was where the first roar came from. He had only felt that kind of strong wave from the spiritual ruin beast king before. That meant that a rank 2 demon beast had appeared. Leng Shiqi thought to himself, which direction will it go first? Now there were only 5 factions on Blood Mist Island. They were the Yushu clan, Blood Moon, Seiji, the 2 alliances, the Qingyan League and the Triad. These 5 factions were scattered in 5 directions at the foot of the mountain. With the strength of these 5 factions, dealing with a few rank 1 demon beasts was still within the acceptable range. However, if they were attacked by a rank 2 demon beast, then they could only run away. That rank 2 demon beast was the biggest threat. The roars of the demon beasts gradually dissipated. Everyone waited vigilantly for a long time, but they didn't see any demon beasts coming over. Their hearts were beating like drums, and they were at a loss. Yushu asked doubtfully, "Why isn't there any movement?" "I don't know, but at least it's a good thing for us. Spread out all the pure spirit realm cultivators to patrol the surroundings. Everyone else, hurry up and cultivate. Throw in all the resources and strive to have a few more people break through to the pure spirit realm in the shortest time possible. I'm going out." After Leng Shiqi finished speaking, he directly disappeared into the thick fog. Yushu was stunned for a moment, then he followed Leng Shiqi's instructions. Leng Shiqi, on the other hand, carefully walked to the mountainside alone. No one knew when these demonic beasts would suddenly attack. It was like a sharp sword hanging over their heads, making them feel uneasy at all times. Leng Shiqi didn't like this feeling. He was skilled and bold enough to explore the demon beasts first. However, because the fog was too big and there were tall trees everywhere, Leng Shiqi's speed was not fast. After walking for a while, he felt that something was wrong. As he walked, he couldn't help but stop and then turn around. His right hand was already holding the hilt of his sword, but there was nothing behind him. That's not right. Leng Shiqi frowned. He remembered that when he walked over, he passed by an unknown forked plant, but now that he turned around, there were 2 straight towering trees behind him. Leng Shiqi narrowed his eyes, and a hint of seriousness appeared in his eyes. Immediately he stomped hard, creating a small pit under his feet, and then walked to the 2 towering trees. Leng Shiqi pulled out his spirit sword and flicked his wrist. The tip of the sword drew a mark on the trunk. Then he did not continue to go up. Instead, he walked down dozens of steps and then returned the way he came. When he came back and saw that the mark on the trunk was still there, he secretly breathed a sigh of relief. He thought that there was still something like a maze in the fog. He secretly thought that he was overthinking it. However, when he continued to take a few steps forward, he was suddenly stunned. The small pit that he stepped on was gone. Chapter 105. Leng Shiqi noticed that the small hole had disappeared and his heart sank. He knew that he was no longer in the same place. Looks like the fog has not only blocked our vision, it has also messed up our sense of direction, Leng Shiqi thought to himself. However, Leng Shiqi did not panic. He raised his left hand and a faint light appeared in his palm. Then he pushed his left hand and a strong wind blew out of his palm. It was the 2nd rank spiritual skill, Spirit Attack. Spirit Attack was a spiritual skill that did not have much power before it was fused with the attribute, but now it had a miraculous effect. The strong wind blew away the fog in a large area. Leng Shiqi hurriedly channeled his spiritual energy into his eyes and quickly observed the surrounding terrain. There, Leng Shiqi saw the small hole he had stepped on before, and his eyes lit up. He roughly looked and saw that the small hole was not far away from him. It was just that the direction was a little off. It was not terrible to deviate a little. What was terrible was that if you deviated a little every time you walked, then you did not know where you would end up. Leng Shiqi hesitated for a while. It was still very troublesome to find the way back. In the end, he decided to continue forward. But from then on, Leng Shiqi would leave a small hole on the ground every few steps. Moreover, as long as he encountered a plant, he would mark it with a different number. In addition, every once in a while, he would use spirit attack to ensure that his direction was correct. In this way, Leng Shiqi walked for about a quarter of an hour. Suddenly, his feet moved and his body flashed. Almost at the same time, a ferocious mouth bit down on the spot where Leng Shiqi had been standing. Leng Shiqi turned his head and saw a brown python with its mouth wide open and fangs sticking out its tongue at him. That was close. Leng Shiqi was secretly sweating in his heart, because his perception was a little chaotic in this thick fog. He was almost ambushed by a demon beast before he realized it. Fortunately, it was him. If it was an ordinary spirit cultivator of the pure spirit realm, he would have already been ambushed by the giant python. Leng Shiqi snorted coldly. He held the spirit sword in his hand and tapped it a few times. Several invisible sword chi suddenly shot out. Although the giant python could not see the sword chi, it instinctively sensed danger. Its huge body agilely rolled and dodged the two sword chis. Even so, 3 to 4 sword chis still managed to cut through the giant python's body. Hiss hiss. The huge python hissed a few times in pain. Its wild nature flared up, and it twisted its body to bite over. Leng Shiqi's expression did not change. He clenched his fist, and the spirit sword in his hand disappeared and turned into a long spear. This was a second-grade spirit spear that the Yushu clan had plundered. Leng Shiqi pointed his spear, and a strong fighting spirit suddenly erupted from his body. His aura became extremely domineering. He raised his spear, and the tip of the spear glowed with spiritual light as he charged forward. It was the second-grade spirit technique, formation-breaking tyrant spear. The spear and the python collided in the blink of an eye. However, at this moment, Leng Shiqi's body suddenly sank a little, and he narrowly dodged the python's attack from below. At the same time, the spear stabbed upwards. Poochie! The spear stabbed out and directly pierced through the giant python. Leng Shiqi patted the bottom of the spear, and the spear immediately pierced through the giant python and flew into the air. In the blink of an eye, Leng Shiqi's figure suddenly disappeared, and then strangely appeared in the air. He turned around and held onto the spear. With a walla sound, Leng Shiqi held the spear and drew a huge cross light before smashing it down again. The tip of the spear pierced the giant python again with a cross light, nailing the giant python to the ground. Leng Shiqi gently landed and stood on the tip of the spear. His ink-flowing robe fluttered in the wind, and his eyes were full of cold killing intent. The giant python kept twisting its huge body, but it couldn't break free. It could only twist its body and swing its tail. Leng Shiqi didn't even turn his head. He held the sword in his right hand, and when the snake tail was about to hit him, he instantly cut the snake tail in half. A pillar of scarlet spurted out. Leng Shiqi withdrew his sword and formed a seal, and the pillar of blood was gathered together. Not long after, the giant python's body shriveled up, and there was no more sound. After collecting the demon blood and selling the giant python's body to the system, Leng Shiqi looked around and muttered, "It seems that this place is near the mountainside." Then Leng Shiqi withdrew his spear, made a mark, and continued to walk forward. Unexpectedly, not long after he walked, he encountered another demon beast. When the demon beast saw someone, it immediately rushed over with bloodshot eyes. But this time, Leng Shiqi didn't fight. Instead, he followed the marks he made and ran back. The demon beast chased closely behind him. Every time it was about to catch up to Leng Shiqi, he would use the confusion footwork to open up the distance. Leng Shiqi silently calculated the distance as he ran. Not long after, the demon beast suddenly stopped chasing. It stood in place and roared crazily. Seeing this, Leng Shiqi's heart skipped a beat as if he had thought of something. Then he walked towards the demonic beast step by step. When Leng Shiqi took 8 steps, the demon beast bared its fangs and pounced at him again. He lightly tapped his foot and floated back 3 meters. That demonic beast stopped again. Interesting. Could it be that there's some invisible restriction here? Lung Shiqi could tell that the demonic beast seemed to have a limited range of movement. He guessed that the range should be that it couldn't leave the mountainside. With this information, Lung Shiqi's heart calmed down a bit. He immediately went back the way he came. In the end, it took some twists and turns before he finally returned to the camp. When Lung Shiqi returned to the camp, Yushu immediately greeted him and asked, "Brother Dark Crow, are you okay?" Yushu didn't immediately ask about the demon beast. Instead, he was concerned about Lung Shiqi's safety. This surprised Lung Shiqi a bit. He first shook his head and said, "I'm fine. Let's talk inside." The two walked into the tent. Lung Shiqi directly said, "The fog in the Blood Mist Island is a bit strange. If you go out rashly, you might get lost. In the future, when you send people out to collect food and water, be careful. It's best to make a mark. Also, don't worry too much about the demon beast. They shouldn't come down in a short period of time. During this time, everyone must cultivate and improve their strength as much as possible before the demon beast attacks." Yushu nodded to show that he understood. Then he went out to make arrangements. Lung Shiqi returned to his tent and calmed down to carefully refine his spirit power. He used external objects to break through to the 7th level of the pure spirit realm. His foundation was a bit unstable. Now he had to slowly purify his spirit power. After everything settled down, the entire Yushu clan set off a cultivation frenzy. Other than those who were patrolling and collecting resources, everyone else was working hard to cultivate. These peaceful days lasted for 9 days. After 9 days, the entire Blood Mist Island was shrouded in the sound of the demon beast. Everyone knew that the demon beast had come. Chapter 106. Roar, roar, roar. The roars of the demonic beasts were endless. Everyone from the Yushu clan stood there in an orderly manner, with nearly 30 people standing at the front. These people were all spirit cultivators of the pure spirit realm. In the 9 heavens, Yushu could be considered to have hardened his heart, throwing down all of his cultivation resources, and even passing down a rank 2 cultivation method. All spirit cultivators of the 9th level of the spirit gathering realm could cultivate at will. In addition, the spirit energy of the Blood Mist Island was more than 3 times denser than before. In just 9 days, more than 10 people had broken through to the pure spirit realm. Hua Lingling, Blood is no different, Mu 21, and the others had all reached the 4th level of the pure spirit realm, and could take charge of things on their own. Yushu was still standing at the front, holding 2 daggers of different shapes in his hands, his expression solemn. Only Lung Shiqi leaned against a log with his arms crossed. Because he was wearing a mask, his expression could not be seen. But from his fingers that were involuntarily tapping, it could be seen that his heart was not calm. Of course, what Lung Shiqi cared about was not the rank 1 demonic beasts, but the rank 2 demonic beasts. Which side would the rank 2 demonic beasts attack first? No one knew. Time passed bit by bit, and the roars of the demonic beasts slowly approached. Everyone's hearts were in their throats. Finally, a demonic beast appeared in everyone's sight. Then, the 2nd, the 3rd, until the 13th demonic beast appeared. A total of 13 demonic beasts. The spirit cultivators of the pure spirit realm, including Yushu, all turned pale and secretly swallowed their saliva. The spirit cultivators of the spirit gathering realm behind them turned pale with fright, and some of them even trembled and could not control their legs. Yushu glanced at Lung Shiqi with a questioning look in his eyes. Lung Shiqi nodded silently. Yushu took a deep breath and shouted with all his strength. "Everyone, divide into 10 groups. Each group will fight against 1 demonic beast. I and the vice leader will deal with the rest. Remember, only by fighting with all your strength will you have a chance of survival. If anyone escapes, kill them on the spot. Fight! Fight!" Everyone shouted this word at the top of their lungs, and immediately took the initiative to charge out. The Yushu clan's campsite was only built with trees. It was completely useless against a first-stage demonic beast. It was better to charge out directly. When everyone rushed out of the campsite, they tacitly divided into 10 groups, each of them facing a demonic beast. Yushu rushed towards the demonic beast alone. As for Lung Shiqi, he unsheathed his saber and slashed out nearly 100 saber shadows that enveloped the two demonic beasts. The battle had begun. Rank 1 beasts were no longer a threat to the Lung Shiqi, even if there were two of them. However, Lung Shiqi was not in a hurry to kill the two beasts. He only used a few low-level sword techniques to entangle the beasts while observing the others' battles. Yushu was fighting alone with a giant white-furred wolf. At present, Yushu still had the upper hand. Among the others, only Hua Lingling and the other two were barely holding on. As for the rest, they were completely unable to fight against the first-stage demonic beasts. Every now and then, someone would die tragically under the claws of the demonic beasts. In the blink of an eye, more than a dozen people had fallen to the ground dead. Lung Shiqi knew that he could not delay any longer. His saber suddenly became fierce. His body was like a phantom, and with the shadow of his saber he cut open wounds on the demonic beasts' bodies. The two demonic beasts suddenly roared, and immediately their bodies bloomed with a dazzling bloody light. Seeing this familiar scene, Lung Shiqi's heart skipped a beat. He knew that they were about to mutate. Lung Shiqi appeared beside the demonic beasts in a flash, and in the next moment, he slashed out two saber shadows. Pu-pu! The two demonic beasts fell to the ground. The demonic beasts shrouded in bloody light had just begun to mutate when they were both beheaded by Lung Shiqi. Unfortunately, he could not refine the demonic blood in front of everyone, nor could he deal with the demonic beasts' corpses. He felt a little lost. Next, Lung Shiqi looked left and right, then rushed to Yushu's side. However, when he was halfway there, he found that the demonic beast that Yushu was fighting was also emitting bloody light. Yushu naturally knew what this meant. With a fierce look on his face, he clenched his sabers and rushed directly in front of the demonic beast. Then he squatted and immediately jumped up. At the same time, his body spun rapidly. The two sabers in his hands burst out with saber shadows. From afar, it looked like a small tornado formed by saber shadows. Countless saber shadows fell on the demonic beast's body. In the blink of an eye, its flesh was torn open, as if it was dying of 1,000 cuts. Lung Shiqi, who was halfway there, suddenly stopped in his tracks. Unknowingly, Yushu's strength had become so strong. At this time, Yushu turned his head slightly tiredly and smiled at Lung Shiqi, then immediately rushed to another demonic beast. Lung Shiqi nodded slightly, and was about to deal with the other demonic beasts. Suddenly, all the demonic beasts paused in unison, then roared towards the sky. The people of the Yushu clan were also stunned, but they did not take the opportunity to attack the demonic beasts. Instead, they all turned their heads to look in one direction, because there was a strange demonic beast slowly walking over. This demonic beast looked like a giant crocodile, but its body was upright. The scales on its body were dark silver, and there seemed to be a faint flicker of fire on the scales. The most terrifying thing was that this demonic beast's aura was much stronger than those rank 1 demonic beasts. From afar, one could feel an invisible pressure pressing down on one's body. This was a rank 2 demonic beast. Silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile. The moment the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile appeared, everyone from the Yushu clan felt their hearts sink, and a chill ran down their spines. A sense of despair rose from the bottom of their hearts. Just these rank 1 demonic beasts were already difficult for them to deal with, let alone a rank 2 demonic beast. It could even be said that those spirit cultivators in the spirit assembly realm did not even have the qualifications to face a rank 2 demonic beast. Lung Shiqi's eyes could not help but twitch a few times. At this moment, he still clearly remembered that Yushu had said that rank 2 demonic beasts would definitely not come here. He turned his head to look at Yushu, and found that Yushu's face was already as black as iron. He really did not expect to be targeted by a rank 2 demonic beast. One must know that there were still 5 factions on the Blood Mist Island, and everyone had a 20% chance. However, the Yushu clan just happened to bump into them. However, the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile did not care about what they thought. When it saw so many people, it immediately opened its bloody mouth and pounced towards the nearest person. That person was a newly advanced spirit cultivator in the pure spirit stage. Facing such a terrifying silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile, he subconsciously wanted to escape, but his legs did not listen to him at this time. Seeing this scene, Yushu immediately rushed over. Lung Shiqi also moved his feet and quickly rushed over. However, the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile was not slow either. In the blink of an eye, it rushed in front of that person and bit down. That person only had time to block in front of him with his weapon, but it was a pity that the weapon broke in half in an instant. A spirit cultivator in the pure spirit stage could not even block one attack from the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile, and was torn apart. Chapter 107. In the blink of an eye, the silver-scaled fire-armored alligator had killed a spirit cultivator of the pure spirit realm, casting a shadow over everyone's heart. There were even some who had the thought of escaping, but the other rank 1 demonic beasts had started to bite them crazily, not giving them the chance to escape. At this time, Yushu had already rushed over. He was not afraid as he raised his dual blades and suddenly slashed out 2 shocking blade auras. These blade auras were only slightly weaker than Lung Shiqi's. However, what no one expected was that when these 2 blade auras slashed onto the silver-scaled fire-armored alligator's back, they only created 2 rows of dazzling sparks. When the sparks dissipated, the silver-scaled fire-armored alligator was safe and sound. There were only 2 shallow scratches on its back. Yushu, bang! The silver-scaled fire-armored alligator swung its tail, and Yushu immediately spat out blood and flew out, crashing into a thick tree trunk. How can I fight this?" Yushu said weakly. All of this naturally fell into Lung Shiqi's eyes. He was also secretly amazed at the silver-scaled fire-armored alligator's strong defense. However, he still continued to rush over, because at this time, only he could deal with the silver-scaled fire-armored alligator. Lung Shiqi stepped on the black fog, and his body moved continuously. After dodging 2 attacks from the silver-scaled fire-armored alligator, he found an opportunity and waved his battle blade, causing a magnificent crescent blade aura to surge out. The blade aura was so bright that it even dispersed the surrounding fog. The blade aura ruthlessly slashed onto the silver-scaled fire-armored alligator's legs. Yushu stared at the blade aura with a trace of envy and hope in his eyes. He was envious because he could not slash out such a blade aura. He hoped that Lung Shiqi could deal with the rank 2 demonic beast. The saber light slashed down and made a strange sound. When the saber light dissipated, it was clear that Lung Shiqi's saber had left a deep cut on the silver-scale fire-armored alligator's legs. Lung Shiqi could not help but frown when he saw this. The defensive power of this silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile was far beyond his imagination. It was even stronger than the spiritual ruin beast king. Lung Shiqi's waning moon rapid light slash was able to cut off the 4 claws of the mutated demon beast. Now that Lung Shiqi's cultivation had improved greatly, it could only slightly injure the silver-scale fire-armored crocodile. One could imagine how strong the silver-scale fire-armored crocodile's defense was. Lung Shiqi hurriedly retreated after slashing with his saber. The moment he retreated, the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's thick arm slashed down, leaving a deep and long claw mark on the ground. Lung Shiqi's clothes fluttered in the wind created by the demonic beasts. At this moment, the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile was glaring at Lung Shiqi with its blood-red eyes. It wanted to tear him into pieces. Lung Shiqi secretly smiled when he saw this. Then he lightly tapped his foot and floated back. The silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile roared and leaped forward. However, Lung Shiqi dodged again and again. He turned his hand and slashed with another wind slash. Unfortunately, this perfect wind slash could not break through the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's defense. It only left a deeper mark than Yushu's. However, this was enough to enrage the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile, causing it to chase after Lung Shiqi. Under his guidance, the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile gradually left the camp. Seeing that Lung Shiqi had lured the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile away, everyone secretly sighed in relief. Although rank 1 demonic beasts were very dangerous, at least they still had some confidence. However, facing a rank 2 demonic beast, they were in despair. Yushu continuously stuffed a few pills into his mouth and led everyone to continue resisting the remaining 10 rank 1 demonic beasts. Lung Shiqi gradually lured the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile away. During this process, Lung Shiqi also discovered that although the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's running speed was not very fast, its explosive speed in a short distance was very shocking. Lung Shiqi had almost been caught twice. Fortunately, he had injured the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's legs with his saber. Otherwise, it would be hard to say if he could lure it out safely. It's about time. After a while, Lung Shiqi looked around and felt that they were far enough away. He immediately stopped. Then he suddenly turned around and a long spear suddenly appeared in his hand. He turned around and stabbed. The silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile only had Lung Shiqi in its eyes. It did not even look at the long spear, and still opened its bloody mouth to pounce. Ding! The tip of the long spear pierced the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile, but there was a sound of metal clashing. The entire long spear even bent, as if it would break in a few breaths' time. This spear did not cause any damage to the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile, but it did block the crocodile. Lung Shiqi clenched his left hand into a fist. Suddenly, there was a faint sound of a tiger's roar. A terrifying force condensed on his fist. He suddenly punched out. The fist was like a fierce tiger treading on waves as it smashed into the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's chest. The fierce tiger treading on waves fist contained both internal and external forces. The external force caused the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's body to shrink a little. The internal force mercilessly rushed into its body and crazily destroyed its flesh. After hitting the target, Lung Shiqi did not dare to be greedy and immediately dodged. The silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile roared in pain. The silver scales all over its body lifted up, forming a barb-like existence. Seeing this, Lung Shiqi knew that it was not good. He felt that it was a little troublesome. Originally, he wanted to imitate the battle with the spiritual ruin beast king, and use the fierce tiger treading on waves fist to break its defense. Then, he would use the overflowing meridian sword chi to seal its meridians and slowly wear it down to death. But he did not expect that this demonic beast would have such a method. This disrupted his plan. Thus, the killing intent in Lung Shiqi's heart subsided a little. If he could not use the fierce tiger treading on waves fist, then the chances of killing this beast would be much smaller. Unless he used the beast chi battle runes to face it head-on, but the price would be too great. Furthermore, he might not be able to kill the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile. Lung Shiqi hesitated for a moment, but still decided not to take the risk. He only needed to stall the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile. The Yushu clan had more than 100 people. Among them, there were close to 30 pure spirit realm cultivators. In addition, they also had a few trump cards to deal with the remaining 10 demonic beasts. However, deaths and injuries were inevitable. After that, Lung Shiqi immediately changed his strategy. He no longer faced the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile head-on. He maintained the ghost parade and wandered around. Whenever the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile approached, he would use the confusion footwork to increase the distance between them. From then on, a chase began. Lung Shiqi's cultivation was at the 7th level of the pure spirit realm. He had a lot of spirit energy. Furthermore, he had some pills to recover spirit energy. He did not need to worry about the consumption of spirit energy for a short period of time. However, there was a problem. At the beginning, Lung Shiqi could still barely remember the surrounding environment and direction. However, as the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile approached again and again, Lung Shiqi had to be completely focused. He did not dare to be distracted and gradually lost his sense of direction. One man and one beast quickly shuttled through the dense forest. After about 15 minutes, Lung Shiqi only had half of his spirit energy left. He estimated that the distance was far enough. Just as he was about to use the Hand of Earth to get rid of the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile, he suddenly heard the sound of intense fighting not far away. Lung Shiqi's heart moved and he immediately rushed in that direction. Chapter 108. Currently, there were only 5 forces left on the Blood Mist Island, and the Triad was one of them. This alliance was made up of 3 forces. Before the arrival of the second heavenly collapse, the strongest forces of the Yushu clan all went up the mountain, which made them a little anxious. They also guessed that there was something fishy, but their respective forces were not enough to fight against the monsters on the mountain. In the end, they decided to join forces and form an alliance to fight against the monsters. Facts proved that their decision was very wise. Today, they were also besieged by more than 10 monsters. Fortunately, they had a lot of people. Although they suffered heavy casualties, they had already killed more than half of the monsters. Seeing that victory was in front of them, their morale was greatly boosted, and they all gave it their all. However, at this moment, a figure suddenly appeared and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Only a few people noticed it, but they all thought that their eyes were playing tricks on them, so they did not pay too much attention. But what everyone didn't expect was that a demonic beast followed closely behind, and it was a rank 2 demonic beast. This was naturally the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile that was chasing after Lung Shiqi. Lung Shiqi originally planned to escape directly, but he accidentally came to the Triad, so he thought of a way to lure the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile over. After he came here, he immediately drilled into the ground and sank deep, afraid that the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile would find his aura. When the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile rushed over, it suddenly lost Lung Shiqi's figure, and became even more furious. It immediately roared towards the sky. Its roar that contained anger immediately attracted everyone's attention. At this moment, whether it was the cultivators of the Triad or the rank 1 monsters, they were all intimidated by the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's roar. The blood in the eyes of the rank 1 monsters became denser, and the cultivators of the Triad were all ashen, not knowing what to do. Originally, these rank 1 monsters had already caused them to suffer heavy casualties, but now, a rank 2 monster suddenly appeared. Especially the Alliance Master of Triad, Extreme Evil. When he felt the terrifying aura of the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile, even with his cultivation at the 6th level of the pure spirit realm, he broke out in cold sweat, let alone the others. To the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile, since it couldn't find the person who injured it, as long as it was a human, it would tear them apart. The silver-scaled fire-armored alligator arched its body and shot out like a sharp arrow. It was like a tiger entering a flock of sheep. In the blink of an eye, it tore several people into pieces. Instantly, blood splattered everywhere. Seeing this scene, who would still dare to fight it? The sudden appearance of the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile broke the psychological defense of the crowd. In the blink of an eye, more than 10 people fled. Extreme Evil immediately raged. Idiots, a bunch of idiots. The faster you run, the faster you die. As soon as these people fled, the tier 1 demonic beasts that were originally suppressed went berserk in the blink of an eye. It was hard to suppress them anymore. The entire battle seemed to be in a state of complete defeat. Extreme Evil watched as his subordinates died one after another, especially those who fled. How could they outrun the demonic beasts? Instead, they died even faster. However, Extreme Evil still didn't give up. He shouted, "Don't hold back anymore. Use all your trump cards. Who knows, you might still have a chance." After saying that, Extreme Evil slid out an icy blue needle from his sleeve and shot it out. The speed of the ice needle was extremely fast. It just happened to catch the moment the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile stopped and shot it. The moment the ice needle reached the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile, it didn't pierce into it. Instead, it strangely turned into a shocking cold air and swallowed it. The silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's body was suddenly covered with a layer of ice. Furthermore, the ice was getting thicker and thicker, sealing it in ice. At the same time, the 2 people beside Extreme Evil also took out 2 items with a pained expression. One was a light crossbow. On the light crossbow were 2 crossbow bolts, one black and one white. When the crossbow bolts were shot, they actually intertwined with each other in mid-air, and turned into a black and white light beam. The other person took out an oval-shaped container. He threw the container into mid-air. Numerous colorful little insects scattered out from the container, and crawled towards the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile. The silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile was currently sealed in ice. However, a layer of faint silver flame suddenly emerged from its body. The ice on the surface of its body began to melt rapidly. It seemed to have sensed a threat and tried its best to move its body a little. Pff. In the end, the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile moved a little. That black and white crossbow bolt pierced into the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's lower abdomen. Immediately after, the two opposing forces suddenly exploded. In the blink of an eye, a large area of the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's scales exploded, revealing the flesh underneath. The silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile wanted to howl in pain, but the layer of ice on its head still sealed it in ice. It could only barely open its mouth, but no sound came out. Right after the explosion, hundreds of little insects crawled onto its body. Many of them directly drilled into its body through the wound on its lower abdomen, and mercilessly tore apart its flesh. Roar! Bang! The silver flame on the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's body suddenly surged and instantly melted all the ice crystals. The silver flame was still incessantly burning those little insects on its body. The corpses of the insects fell down in batches. The silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's pair of blood-red eyes stared at Extreme Evil, and the other two. Its eyes flickered with a crazy killing intent. At this moment, Extreme Evil and the other two's hearts were already dead. They had joined hands and used their strongest trump card, but they still couldn't do anything to the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile. They knew that this was not something they could deal with. Sigh, run, run. Run as many as you can. Extreme Evil sighed deeply. It was as if he had used up all his strength to finish this sentence. Even he, the alliance leader, had spoken. This time no one dared to stay. The dozens of people immediately scattered like birds and beasts. The rest was a massacre by the demonic beasts. After a moment, this place had become a scene of carnage. Fresh blood dyed the ground red. Broken limbs were everywhere. The remaining few demonic beasts, including the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile, were excitedly eating. At this moment, the scales on the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's body had returned to its original state. Moreover, it looked a little weak. Just as it was replenishing its strength, the ground under its feet suddenly softened. Immediately, a huge fist with an incomparably turbulent force drilled out from the ground and hit the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's lower abdomen. Bang! A loud sound rang out. The silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile was directly blasted into the air by this punch. Traces of fishy blood flowed out from its mouth. At the place where the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile was standing just now, there was an additional figure. This person's appearance was clearly that of a 12 or 13-year-old youth. However, he was as tall as an adult. Moreover, his entire body was bulging with bulging muscles. A tyrannical aura was emitted from his body. A faint trace of blood-red light appeared in his eyes. This person was naturally Lung Shiqi, who had activated the Beast Origin battle pattern. In the next moment, Lung Shiqi instantly disappeared. When they looked again, he had already appeared behind the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile. Another punch landed. Chapter 109. Thanks to my book friends Not by Xiaojun for their recommendation and Cute Gugugu and Pomegranate Mama for their support. Lung Shiqi, who had activated the Beast Origin battle pattern, attacked with another tiger wave stomping fist on its back. With a boom, the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile was smashed into the ground by a huge force, creating a large crater. The scales on its back were also cracked. Lung Shiqi was still in the air. He held the sword in his right hand and the spear in his left hand. With a shake of the spear, he drew a huge cross in the air and fiercely stabbed down. At the same time, he pointed his spirit sword and a faint blue pattern flashed on the blade. Then Lung Shiqi turned into several afterimages and stabbed down. The silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile was hit by the tiger wave stomping fist twice in a row. Although the external force didn't cause much damage to it, the internal force that rushed into its body was constantly destroying its bones and meridians, making it unable to get up for a while. At this moment, The heavy cross spear accurately stabbed into the back of the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile, completely tearing apart its defense. Almost at the same time, several invisible sword chi surged out and entered its body from the wound, instantly sealing all the spirit power in its abdomen. After the sword chi, there were several sharp sword rays. With a piu-piu sound, the wound on the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's abdomen was already open and blood was flowing out. The silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile roared in extreme pain, and a layer of silver flames appeared all over its body. Lung Shiqi already knew it would be like this. After using chaotic blossom lust, he continuously retreated. Immediately, the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile crazily rushed over. Even the other rank 1 monsters rushed over and completely surrounded Lung Shiqi. But Lung Shiqi didn't panic and immediately changed his sword for a saber. As several monstrous beasts pounced on him, he softly spat out 2 words, "I spread." In an instant, a thick chill rose from Lung Shiqi's feet. In the blink of an eye, it condensed into a layer of ice and quickly spread out. Those rank 1 demonic beasts were instantly frozen after coming into contact with the ice. However, the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's body emitted silver flames. When the ice surged up and came into contact with the flames, it melted. Sizzling sounds were unceasingly heard, and a thick fog was emitted. Lung Shiqi knew that this bit of ice wouldn't be able to seal the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile, but he didn't plan on sealing it. He just wanted the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile to keep burning with silver flames. This was because he had discovered that the silver-scaled fire-armored alligator's spirit force and physical strength were rapidly being consumed when the silver flames burned. Most importantly, the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's defense was at its weakest at this moment. With the help of the thick water vapor, Lung Shiqi displayed the ghost parade and confusion footwork to the extreme. In a few flashes, he appeared behind the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile. Immediately, a magnificent crescent saber aura suddenly appeared, dispersing all the water vapor. At the same time, it completely engulfed the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile. And Lung Shiqi still attacked the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's wound. After 2 breaths, the saber aura dissipated. Lung Shiqi's saber was deeply embedded in the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's body, almost cutting it in half. However, Lung Shiqi was still not at ease. He withdrew his saber and punched the tiger-treading wave fist on the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's back. He also used the rebound force to retreat. After retreating, Lung Shiqi quickly formed seals and pulled his arms. A large amount of blood flew out from the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's wound and gathered in the air. After a dozen breaths, the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile finally staggered and fell to the ground, no longer breathing. Seeing this scene, Lung Shiqi secretly sighed in relief. He also stopped the seals in his hand and changed to another kind of seal. Then his body slowly returned to its original state, followed by a strong sense of fatigue and soreness that swept through his body. Lung Shiqi's face instantly turned pale. He staggered and almost lost his balance. He hurriedly took out a few pills and swallowed them. Only then did he feel a little better. But at this time, the ice crystals on the other rank 1 monsters began to crack, and more cracks appeared. It looked like they were about to break out of the ice. Lung Shiqi snorted softly and immediately flashed out with the spirit sword in his hand. Then there was an endless crack sound. This was not the sound of the monsters breaking out of the ice, but the sound of Lung Shiqi killing the monsters with the ice crystals. In less than 5 minutes, all the rank 1 monsters were dead. Lung Shiqi's forehead was covered in a layer of cold sweat. Then he arrived next to the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's body, and stabbed it into its head. A light silver monster core was taken out, and Lung Shiqi's face immediately lit up. In today's battle, he had deeply experienced the terror of the beast origin battle pattern. Not only did it provide Lung Shiqi with a huge amount of power, but it also gave him a powerful burst of power. Without the beast origin battle pattern, it would have been impossible for him to kill the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile. According to the demonic beast origin method, once he reached the spirit transformation realm, he would be able to refine the beast origin battle pattern again. Lung Shiqi was looking forward to it because the monster core of the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile was likely to be refined into a beast origin battle pattern that could increase his defense. However, now was not the time for him to look forward to the future. After he looked around and saw that there was no one around, he sank into the ground and began to recover his spirit energy. After he recovered his spirit energy, he collected the blood of the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile and the other monsters and sold the corpses to the system. Finally, he fumbled his way back to the Yushu clan's camp. When Lung Shiqi returned, what he saw was also a hellish scene. At this time, the Yushu clan's camp was already in a mess. Blood had already dyed the ground red, and there were corpses everywhere. There were both spirit cultivators and monsters. Moreover, there was an aura of death everywhere. Even those who had survived were all lifeless. Lung Shiqi scanned the corpses of the monsters and counted a total of 13. Seeing that the monsters were completely annihilated, he felt relieved. However, the Yushu clan's situation was not good. Originally, there were more than 100 people in the clan, but now there were only 40 to 50 people left. In this battle, more than half of the people were sacrificed. Almost all of the remaining people were injured, and there were even a few who were on the verge of death. It was unknown if they could be saved. Seeing that Lung Shiqi had returned, everyone looked at him gratefully. If he had not lured the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile away, they did not know how many of them would have survived. At this time, Yushu, who was covered in injuries, was still trying his best to comfort everyone and instruct them to deal with the corpses. Seeing that Lung Shiqi had returned, he felt relieved and nodded at him. Lung Shiqi did not say anything and directly went forward to help everyone deal with the battlefield. This time they finally made it through. Chapter 110. In the blink of an eye, it had been 3 months since the last siege of the demonic beasts. Although there were some waves and tribulations in these 3 months, everyone's strength was rapidly increasing, and they managed to survive. Of course, casualties were still inevitable. Currently, the Blood Fog Island only had the Yushu clan, the Blood Moon, the Seiji, and the Qingyan League. The total number of people in these 4 forces was only a little more than 100. From more than 10,000 people to more than 100 people now, only a year and a half had passed. The Yushu clan had the most people among the 4 forces. After the battle 3 months ago, although the Yushu clan only had a little more than 40 people left, they had also accepted some people from the triad. After another 3 months of losses, there were still more than 40 people left. At this time, the Yushu clan's camp was no longer at the foot of the mountain, but halfway up the mountain. This was because the blood firmament had been slowly shrinking all this time. The area below the foot of the mountain had long disappeared. If this continued, it wouldn't be long before they had nowhere to go. From the halfway up the mountain, there was only the mysterious blood tower left. People from various forces had gone to check it, and found out that the blood tower was actually very huge. Although it only had 5 floors, it was at least 200 to 300 feet high. Moreover, there was a door on all 4 sides of the blood fog tower, but the shape of each door was not the same. No one knew the purpose of each door. It was a pity that the blood tower was surrounded by a huge blood light screen, so they couldn't investigate it at close range. However, everyone also discovered that this blood light screen was gradually fading. They believed that it wouldn't be long before it dissipated. This also meant that when the blood firmament at the outermost layer became smaller and smaller, they would have to enter the blood tower. Perhaps this blood red tower was their final test. At this time, in the Yushu clan's temporary camp, other than a few people patrolling, everyone else was diligently cultivating. Moreover, as far as the eye could see, everyone's cultivation was at the pure spirit realm. Now the spirit chi on Bloodmist Island was so rich that it could be touched with one's hand. As long as one's aptitude was passable, all of them had broken through to the pure spirit realm. In fact, most of them were at the middle stage of the pure spirit realm. As for Hua Lingling Mu 21, and Blood is no different, the oldest batch of pure spirit realm spirit cultivators, they were all at the late stage of the pure spirit realm. As for Lung Shiqi and Yushu, their cultivations were shockingly already at the peak of the 9th level of the pure spirit realm. However, the two of them didn't feel that their cultivation speed was fast at all. Because just a few days ago, they had received news that Delta Origi had broken through to the spirit transformation realm. The news of the Delta Origi breaking through to the spirit transformation realm spread like wildfire. It was as if there was a mountain pressing down on everyone's hearts. Especially for those who were at the late stage of the pure spirit realm. It was a huge blow. They knew best that the more they cultivated, the more difficult it was to advance. Just the bottleneck of the 8th and 9th level of the pure spirit realm was enough to block them. When they thought that someone had actually broken through to the spirit transformation realm, they felt that their hard work in cultivation was all for naught in the end. In the end, everyone could only attribute Delta Origi's breakthrough to her heaven-defying aptitude. This was the so-called comparisons are odious. However, only Lung Shiqi knew that the reason why Delta Origi was able to break through to the spirit transformation realm so quickly was not only because of her superb cultivation aptitude, but also because she possessed a rank 4 cultivation method. That rank 4 cultivation method was obtained from the puppet battle in the wetland. This was the answer that Lung Shiqi had exchanged with information later. Delta Origi's breakthrough also brought him a lot of pressure. It has to be said that Lung Shiqi had not slacked off in his cultivation for the past 3 months. Moreover, he had never stopped consuming pills and spirit stones. In addition, he would refine a mass of monster blood every few days. He had broken through from the 8th level of the pure spirit realm to the 9th level, with the help of the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's monster blood. Otherwise, it would have taken him more than 10 days to break through. In fact, Lung Shiqi was already at the peak of the pure spirit realm a month ago. However, because he had relied on external help to break through, when he touched the barrier of the spirit transformation realm, he knew that his foundation was a little unstable. If he did not properly purify his spirit force, he was afraid that he would not be able to break through to the spirit transformation realm for a long time. Therefore, in the following month, he had been purifying his spirit force, causing Yushu's cultivation to gradually catch up with him. On this day, Lung Shiqi looked inwardly at the spirit force in his sea of qi. Every strand of spirit force was incomparably pure, and he finally smiled. It took me a whole month to finally purify all my spirit force to the extreme. Fortunately, nothing too dangerous happened this month. Lung Shiqi whispered to himself. Then Lung Shiqi took out a fist-sized crystal ball from the system space. His eyes flashed with excitement and anticipation. This crystal ball was one of the rewards from the spiritual ruins. It was also the best reward that Lung Shiqi felt was the experience ball. If something like the experience ball was used in the game, it could directly give a large amount of experience to level up. If it was used in the real world, it would give a huge amount of spirit force. This was the kind of spirit force that could directly increase one's cultivation. Moreover, it was exceptionally pure, so there was no need to worry about leaving any hidden dangers. Lung Shiqi had not used this thing until now because he wanted to break through to the spirit transformation realm. That's right, Lung Shiqi was preparing to break through to the next realm, the spirit transformation realm. In the cultivation system, the pure spirit realm was a realm that opened up the spirit force in the sea of qi. The spirit transformation realm was the process of turning the spirit force in the sea of qi into mist, and the mist into the sea. In order to break through from the pure spirit realm to the spirit transformation realm, the spirit force in the body must be condensed into mist. Lung Shiqi cultivated 2 rank 3 cultivation methods at the same time, so he knew that there were 2 ways to break through. The method recorded in the demonic beast technique was more violent. It was to directly compress the sea of qi and turn it into mist to break through. Although this was simple, the process was very dangerous. If one was not careful, it would cause the sea of qi to become turbulent. In the most serious case, the sea of qi would collapse, causing one's cultivation to fall back to the spirit gathering realm. The other rank 3 cultivation method, Moonlight Cloud Codex, had a more smooth method. Lung Shiqi thought about it and decided to play it safe, and used the method of the Moonlight Cloud Codex to break through. After all, the spirit force in the experience ball in his hand was very large and very pure. There was no need for him to take the risk. Since he had decided, Lung Shiqi immediately adjusted his state and crushed the experience ball. Immediately after, the experience ball instantly turned into a huge ball of spirit qi that gently wrapped Lung Shiqi. Lung Shiqi suddenly felt countless gentle spirit qi coming from his limbs and bones, making his whole body feel very comfortable. Lung Shiqi smoothly mobilized this spirit qi to break through the bottleneck of the spirit transformation realm again and again. During the process of breaking through this time, Lung Shiqi did not feel a lot of pain. Instead, the process was quite smooth. About an hour later, Lung Shiqi's body vaguely made a sound as if something had broken. Immediately, Lung Shiqi's aura suddenly surged and the ink-flowing clothes on his body began to move. Waves of invisible spiritual pressure spread out, setting off bursts of wind and waves. Lung Shiqi abruptly opened his eyes, and two dazzling lights flashed through them. His cultivation was already at the spirit transformation realm. Chapter 111. Lung Shiqi gently clenched his fist, feeling the majestic power in his body, and finally laughed. Breaking through to the spirit transformation realm at this critical moment gave him more confidence to survive. At this moment, a line of words appeared before his eyes. The system is about to be upgraded. It will take 3 natural days. During the upgrade, the system will not be available. Seeing this message, Lung Shiqi suddenly realized that he had not drawn a prize for a long time. The last time he had drawn a prize was when he was preparing to deal with the Beilichuan and the others' joint attack. Moreover, after a long period of accumulation, Lung Shiqi now had more than 500 system coins. However, he had not used them for the lucky draw because the basic prizes were not very useful to him. He still had a certain level of expectation for the system upgrade this time. He hoped that after the upgrade, there would be a higher level of lucky draw, and he also looked forward to the opening of some subsidiary system. After all, the system backpack that appeared after the last system upgrade was a great help to him. Not only could it store a large amount of resources, but it also gave him great flexibility in battle. 3 days. Let's wait. There's something I need to do anyway. Lung Shiqi softly muttered to himself. Then, he continued to sit cross-legged and took out a light silver monster core from the system space. This was the monster core of the rank 2 monster, the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile. Lung Shiqi planned to fuse the beast origin battle rune again. After breaking through to the spirit transformation realm, he could fuse one more beast origin battle rune. This way he would have more choices. With the previous experience, Lung Shiqi knew that fusing the beast origin battle rune had a high requirement for the strength of his body. Therefore, he had been practicing the 8 stones horizontal training technique for the past 3 months. At this time, his body was comparable to a spirit cultivator at the 9th level of the spirit gathering realm. In addition, Lung Shiqi was now at the spirit transformation realm. Fusing the beast origin battle rune would not be as dangerous as last time. Then Lung Shiqi swallowed the monster core of the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile. As soon as the demonic core entered his mouth, it turned into countless faint silver light spots and merged into his flesh and blood. Bursts of heart-wrenching pain instantly spread throughout his body. Fortunately, his physical body was relatively strong, and he began to mobilize the majestic spirit energy in his body to nourish his flesh and blood. The pain was still within the acceptable range of Lung Shiqi. Gradually, Lung Shiqi outlined the outline of a demon beast from his neck to his lower abdomen. As time passed, the pattern became clearer and clearer, finally forming the shape of the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile. At this moment, Lung Shiqi's body suddenly emitted a silver brilliance. The brilliance grew and covered his entire body in the blink of an eye. After 2 breaths of time, the light dissipated. Lung Shiqi's body was covered in silver, as if he had been painted with a layer of silver paint. It looked a little strange. Lung Shiqi took off his ink-flowing robe and looked down. It turned out that it wasn't that he was covered in silver, but that every inch of his skin was covered in a layer of thin silver scales. Lung Shiqi casually touched it, and felt like he was touching armor. Then he took out a dagger and stabbed at his left arm. However, the dagger only created a burst of sparks when it hit the scales, and the scales were not damaged at all. Oh, It's actually so hard. Lung Shiqi raised his eyebrows in pleasant surprise. It has to be said that his dagger was a rank 2 spirit treasure. Although he didn't use much spirit force, it could easily cut through metal and stone. Lung Shiqi smiled with satisfaction. This way, I have the flexibility of the flowing ink robe on the outside and the hardness of the scales on the inside. Ordinary attacks won't be able to hurt me. Then Lung Shiqi removed the beast origin battle pattern and put on the flowing ink robe. After adjusting his state, he began to consolidate his cultivation at the spirit transformation realm, breaking through to the spirit transformation realm, and condensing the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's beast origin battle pattern had greatly increased his strength, but he had to constantly improve his strength. The stronger he became, the greater his chance of surviving until the end. One day later, a respectful voice came from outside his tent. "My lord, the gang leader invites you over." Lung Shiqi stopped cultivating after hearing this. He let out a sigh of relief and said, "I know." At the same time, there was a trace of doubt in his heart. What is it? However, he didn't rush out. He closed his eyes and made a strange gesture. Then his aura gradually weakened. When he opened his eyes, his aura had returned to the 9th layer of the pure spirit realm. It was Lung Shiqi who had used the aura concealing spell to hide his cultivation. Then Lung Shiqi walked out of the tent with some doubt. The moment he walked out of the tent, Ziyu obediently flew to his shoulder. When Lung Shiqi was cultivating, he would send Ziyu to guard him. He walked into Yushu's tent with Ziyu. At this moment, only Yushu was inside the tent. He was pacing back and forth as if he was hesitating about something. When he saw Lung Shiqi come in, he handed over a piece of cloth with some words written on it. It looked like a letter. Yushu said anxiously, "This is a letter sent by the leader of the Qingyan League. Take a look." Lung Shiqi hadn't seen Yushu so anxious in a long time. He knew that something was wrong, so he read the letter. Then Lung Shiqi frowned. This letter was written in Qingyan's tone. The first sentence directly told them that Qingyan had broken through to the spirit transformation realm. How is this possible? Lung Shiqi was secretly shocked. Delta Origi was the first to break through to the spirit transformation realm, because of her talent and rank 4 cultivation method. Lung Shiqi knew that he had relied on external help to break through to the spirit transformation realm. He also knew how difficult it was to break through to the spirit transformation realm. He had interacted with Qingyan a few times recently. The last time he saw him, he was only at the 9th layer of the pure spirit realm, a bit weaker than Yushu. How long had it been since then? How could he suddenly break through to the spirit transformation realm? However, since Qingyan had said so, he couldn't be lying. Cultivation was something that couldn't be hidden. There was only one explanation, and that was that Qingyan had also relied on external help to enter the spirit transformation realm. During this period of time, he must have obtained some extremely precious heavenly material and earthly treasure. After thinking about it, Lung Shiqi felt that this was very likely. At the same time, he felt a bit lucky that he had broken through in time. It didn't take long for Lung Shiqi to finish reading the letter. The main content of the letter was that Qingyan wanted to invite the leaders of the various factions to a gathering to discuss the Blood Tower. The Blood Tower was a big problem that everyone couldn't avoid. Qingyan inviting everyone to discuss and share information was indeed a good thing for everyone. However, from the tone of the letter, it seemed that Qingyan had put himself in a leading position. What do you think? Yushu's voice came at the right time. Lung Shiqi pondered for a moment and said, "We have to go." Yushu said, "Yes, but Qingyan's goal is obviously not that simple. I also specifically asked about this person. Do you know that the Qingyan League was originally made up of several factions? At first, it wasn't called the Qingyan League, but it soon became his Qingyan League. It can be seen that not only is this person ambitious, but he also has a lot of methods. Especially since he has broken through to the spirit transformation realm. If we go, I'm afraid we won't have much say." So what if he's in the spirit transformation realm? Sometimes cultivation doesn't represent strength. Agree and we'll go together. Lung Shiqi's eyes lit up. Chapter 112. The next day, Leng Shiqi and Yushu brought 10 people to the meeting place. This place was close to the Crimson Tower and far away from the other factions, so they didn't have to worry about it. After all, these 4 factions had clashed with each other more than once or twice. Their accumulated hatred had reached a point where it was difficult to resolve. If it wasn't for the Crimson Tower hanging over their heads, they wouldn't be sitting together peacefully. When they arrived, Leng Shiqi saw a round table in the distance. 4 people were already seated there. One of them was smiling and saying something, but the others all had serious expressions and didn't seem to have any intention of speaking. When they saw Leng Shiqi and Yushu arrive, a young man in a blue robe stood up and walked over. This was the leader of the Qingyan League, and the organizer of this meeting, Qingyan. Qingyan walked over with a warm smile and said, "So it's Leader Yu and Vice Leader Dark Crow. Qingyan welcomes you with open arms. Please take a seat." Yushu exchanged a few pleasantries with him and sat down. Leng Shiqi followed closely behind. As for the 10 people who came with them, they stayed where they were. After they sat down, the 2 began to exchange meaningless pleasantries. The 2 of them had found their opponents and began to flatter each other endlessly. Leng Shiqi glanced at the others. The young man across from him sat next to Qingyan, but slightly behind him. He was Qingyan's right-hand man Yin Feilin, who was at the 8th level of the pure spirit realm. The young man to Leng Shiqi's right was Hengming. He sat there expressionlessly with 2 strange purple scimitars at his waist. When he saw the 2 scimitars, Leng Shiqi was secretly envious. More than a month ago, Leng Shiqi had also fought with Hengming. Although he won, his scimitars were left with 2 thin cracks. He had been injured by Meng Ming's level 4 spirit tool. Leng Shiqi had even planned to assassinate Hengming, but he was too cautious and could not find a suitable opportunity. Leng Shiqi was slightly surprised by the person sitting next to Hengming. He was Extreme Evil. He was the leader of the Triad Alliance, Extreme Evil, who led the Leng Shiqi to the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile 3 months ago. Unexpectedly, after a few twists and turns, he actually ran to Seiji. Extreme Evil and Hengming were both at the 9th level of the pure spirit realm. At this moment, the people from the 3 major forces were all here. Only Blood Moon was left. Not long after, the Delta Origi also arrived. Even from afar, she didn't hide her powerful aura of the spirit transformation realm. Qingyan let out a soft snort. His spirit force moved, and the same aura of the spirit transformation realm surged out. 2 powerful auras collided with a loud bang, stirring up a gust of wind, blowing the gravel under their feet. However, Leng Shiqi sensed that although Qingyan's aura looked very powerful at first glance, it was a bit lacking. In fact, there was even a faint sense of impatience in his aura. It seems that he did indeed rely on external items to forcefully break through. Leng Shiqi thought to himself. However, he didn't understand why the Delta Origi would so openly announce that she had broken through to the spirit transformation realm. Leng Shiqi knew that the Delta Origi had the aura concealment technique. She could completely hide her cultivation and use it at a critical moment to catch others off guard. However, since the Delta Origi had made such a choice, she must have her reasons. Leng Shiqi didn't ask too much. "Ha ha ha, Moonlord Blood Moon's cultivation is indeed profound. Please take a seat." Qingyan took the initiative to disperse his spirit pressure and laughed. However, there was a layer of sweat on his palms hidden in his sleeves. The Delta Origi also withdrew her spirit force and raised her chin like a proud white swan before sitting down. Chen looked at her with respect but didn't sit down. Instead, he stood respectfully behind the Delta Origi. Seeing that everyone was here, Qingyan said, "Everyone, it has been a 1.5 years since we arrived on the Blood Fog Island. There were more than 10,000 people who came here, but what about now? Only 100 or so people remain. It can be said that those who have survived until now are 1 in 100, and the few of you here are 1 in 1,000. I believe in your talent, perseverance, and..." Just as Qingyan was talking, Xiongming suddenly said, "Get to the point." Qingyan's expression darkened when Xiongming interrupted him so rudely, but he didn't lose his temper. Instead, he continued, "In short, none of you want to die, right?" Everyone's expressions changed when they heard this. That's right, These people could be said to be the most powerful people on the Blood Fog Island. They enjoyed large amounts of resources and constantly worked hard to improve themselves. Why? Was it for the so-called power of the guild master? Perhaps, but definitely not all of it. This was because they knew that these were all rootless waters. If they couldn't leave the island, then it wouldn't take long for them to be devoured by the endless void. Their ultimate goal was to get out alive. This blood-red tower was the last obstacle that stood in their way. Qin Yan continued. Based on the current situation, the blood-red sky will shrink to where we are in about a month's time. In other words, we must enter the Blood Fog Tower in a month. There are 4 entrances to the Blood Fog Tower. I'm sure everyone knows this, but I suggest that we work together to enter one of the entrances. That way, we'll be able to gather the strength of everyone on the Blood Fog Island, and our chances of survival will increase exponentially. Qin Yan carefully observed everyone's expressions after saying this. However, each of them was smarter than the other, and none of them showed any emotion. Lung Shiqi and Yushu looked at each other, and the former secretly signaled with their eyes that they couldn't agree. Putting everything else aside, who would they listen to if the 4 forces joined forces? The leaders of these factions were all proud and arrogant people, and none of them would refuse to listen to anyone else. In addition, they couldn't forget that there had been many fierce conflicts in the past 3 months. Even if they forced themselves to work together, they wouldn't trust each other at all. Delta Origi was the first to object. I don't agree. Qinyan League leader, if this is all you want, then I'll take my leave. I don't agree either, said Meng Shiqi. Yushu also spoke up. That's right. Since there are 4 entrances to the Blood Fog Tower, each of us can have one. Why should we force ourselves to work together? Plus, everyone knows that even if we work together, we won't trust each other. Qinyan didn't expect the other 3 to reject him so decisively. At this moment, his face turned gloomy. Chapter 113. When Qinyan saw that the others had rejected his suggestion so decisively, he shouted, "You'll regret this." As soon as he finished speaking, a few dozen figures vaguely appeared in the distance and surrounded them. Hengming silently gripped the hilt of his saber. Extreme Evil said, "What? Does the Qinyan League leader want to keep us here?" The atmosphere in the room became tense. Qinyan stared at Extreme Evil, then suddenly struck out with his palm. A powerful palm energy mixed with a scorching heat swept over. Extreme Evil was shocked, but he did not panic. He struck out a few times in succession, and the wind generated by his palms was not weak either. But when Azure Flame's palm force met Extreme Fiend's palm force, it immediately crushed it as easily as crushing dry weeds. Extreme Evil's expression finally changed, and he hurriedly backed away. At this moment, Hengming moved and struck out with his sabers. 2 sharp sabers completely shattered the last of the palm energy. Hengming's eyes were filled with killing intent as he stared straight at Qinyan. Qinyan said, "Don't worry, I don't mean any harm." As soon as he finished speaking, he struck out with his palm again. And his target was Lung Shiqi. If you still want to show off. When Lung Shiqi saw Qinyan attacking Extreme Evil and himself, he knew what Qinyan was planning. Faced with Qinyan's powerful palm energy, Lung Shiqi also struck out with his own palm energy. The palm energy was not strong, but it brought about a strong gust of wind, and within the gust of wind, there was also a trace of coldness. The scorching palm energy and the cold gust of wind collided, and a sizzling sound was heard. The 2 forces, one hot and one cold, were evenly matched. Qinyan's heart sank, and he felt a little embarrassed. He secretly increased his strength, but the result was that he still could not defeat Lung Shiqi. At that moment, Yushu stood up, his hand gripping the hilt of his saber. It seemed as though he would attack at any moment. Seeing this, Qinyan withdrew his palm with a gloomy face. Lung Shiqi stood silently beside Yushu. At this moment, Seiji and the Yushu clan members were pressuring Qinyan. If Qinyan dared to attack again, they would join forces and attack him. He didn't seem to fear a spirit transformation realm expert at all. Qinyan was also in great pain. He originally planned to display his strength as a spirit transformation realm cultivator, to intimidate the Seiji and the Yushu clan. He wanted them to know how powerful he was, and that cooperating with him was the wisest decision. His targets were not Hengming and Yushu, but Extreme Evil and Leng Shiqi. However, he didn't expect to lose to Leng Shiqi. Although they were evenly matched, he was one realm higher than Leng Shiqi. This result made it seem as if he, a spirit transformation realm cultivator, was not very powerful. As a result, he couldn't say what he wanted to say. He could only watch them leave with a dark expression. Before Extreme Evil left, he said to him, "I thought the Qingyan League's leader was very powerful, but it seems like he's only SOSO." Qingyan didn't speak, but his fists were clenched tightly. No one had expected the meeting to end so quickly. The main reason was that everyone had vaguely guessed Qingyan's purpose before coming. They wanted to get some information from him, but it ended before they could do anything. If it was just Yushu and Qingyan, it might have been possible. However, Delta Origi and Hengming were not the type to chat for half a day. They both went straight to the point, which led to the gathering ending so quickly. However, after everyone left, Leng Shiqi and Delta Origi secretly met. They exchanged information about the blood-colored tower as soon as they arrived, but unfortunately, there was nothing valuable. After all, no one could get close to the blood-colored tower. Leng Shiqi said with a serious expression, "We will enter the blood-colored tower in a month." Delta Origi's expression was also very serious. They both knew that there were only two outcomes after entering the blood-colored tower: get out or die. This might be their last meeting. However, neither of them showed any other emotions. Take care. Break through to the spirit transformation realm as soon as possible. After that, the two of them left. Leng Shiqi turned around with a hesitant expression. In the end, he circulated his spiritual energy and released the spiritual pressure of the spirit transformation realm. Delta Origi's eyes lit up when she felt this spiritual pressure. At that moment, she suddenly heard the sound of something breaking through the air behind her. She leaned slightly to the side and reached out with 2 fingers. It was an emerald jade hairpin. Leng Shiqi returned to the Yushu clan and went straight to his tent to consolidate his cultivation. 2 days later, he had completely consolidated his cultivation. At the same time, a notification appeared before him. System upgrade complete. Leng Shiqi immediately called out the system and looked at his information. Name: Leng Shiqi Luxingji Cultivation. Spirit Transformation Realm Level 1 Cultivation Method. Rank 3 Cultivation Method. Moonlight Cloud Manual Rank 3 Cultivation Method. Beast Origin Demonic Technique Bloodline. Spiritual Skills. Rank 2 Spiritual Skill. Heavy Cross Spear Mastery Rank 2 Spiritual Skill. Formation Breaking Spear Mastery Rank 2 Spiritual Skill. 6 Yang Palms Mastery Level 2 Spiritual Technique. Wind Catching Kick Level 2 Spiritual Skill. Mountain Destroying Finger. Perfection Level 2 Spiritual Skill. Mysterious Cloud Spike. Rank 3 Spiritual Skill. Channel Breaking Sword Aura System Coins. 521. There were no changes to his information. He then looked at the system interface and saw that there was an additional word. Map. Leng Shiqi immediately opened the map, and a circular map appeared in front of him. However, 99% of the map was black. There was only a small white dot at the bottom right corner. Leng Shiqi guessed, "Is this a fog map?" Then he opened the map and sank into the ground. As he continued to move, more and more white areas appeared on the map. He could clearly see some of the terrain in the white areas, but that was it. With this map, I don't have to worry about things like fog formations, but it doesn't seem to be very useful. Maybe there are other functions. I'll slowly explore it in the future, Leng Shiqi thought as he returned to the tent. Then he opened the lottery interface that he had the most hope for. When he clicked on it, he saw that there were 3 lottery options. He was delighted. The 3 options were beginner lottery, intermediate lottery, and unlimited lottery. At this moment, all 3 options were lit up. Leng Shiqi clicked on the question mark next to the intermediate lottery. He found out that it costs 100 system coins to enter the intermediate lottery. He had always thought that he had saved up a lot of system coins, but now it seemed that he only had enough for 5 draws. This made Lung Shiqi feel very helpless, so he muttered to himself, "The beginner lottery only costs 10 system coins, but the intermediate lottery costs 10 times more. Is the intermediate lottery really that valuable?" You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.